Go live. Oh, that's it. We should be live now. Welcome everybody to the stream. I know it's we're going to give it a chance to really get started, let people get in. Whilst that's happening, I would love to tell you what we're here to do today. We're here to do something really positive, which is a nice change for this channel. We're going to be talking about some decent Star Trek. Now, I did a stream last weekend, I believe, where I talked about my least favourite episodes, or quote, the worst episodes, certainly from my opinion. And we are here to discuss this week the decent ones. And I have a guest on with me, Mr. Clayton Rumley, a good friend of the channel and a superb author. And a man of many, many, many talents. So welcome to the stream, Clayton. It's good to have you back on after all this time.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much. It's great to finally be getting back onto YouTube. I want to thank you so much for all the support and love you've been showing my channel and my book while I've had to kind of step away from things for a while. So it's been really appreciated.
Absolutely, it's been my genuine pleasure. And it's not, it's not something that I'm trying to just push onto people. It's something that I genuinely believe is fantastic. It's a fantastic book, and it's one of those things that it's rare for me to not be able to put a book down. I'm not a big reader, I have to admit. I've read from cover to cover maybe 7 books in my life. I couldn't put Holocene down. The only reason I had to put it down is because I was losing consciousness at the time because it was so late.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Oh, no worries, my friend. No worries. I'm just checking through YouTube just to make
Shameless
sure.
plug.
Secondary shameless plug. Always happy to do it. I'm just checking the streamers live. We're not getting anything up on the Dubry yet. Just bear with me.
For sure.
But yes, we are here to discuss the better episodes. It is saying that we are live and we do have some watchers. For some reason, Studio isn't telling me that I'm live, which is frustrating, really. But what I should do, just bear with me 2 secs, is I shall bring up...
I do see it live in YouTube. I actually had to mute it because I had it scheduled to start watching automatically, and it came on and started talking over you.
Ah, right, okay. That's fine. My wife says keep shamelessly plugging.
Hi, Paige.
I can just about see the chat. Let me put that to a pop-out mode. Right. Yes, we do have our favourite episodes of Star Trek. I assume Clayton's got a list. I know that I do. I'm not really. I've not really spent much time thinking about the format of how we're going to go through it. The only thing I've done is I've gone for the 4 main entries post original series. So I'm working my way through the original series again, and I promised my subscribers that I would do that. So I've sort of left them by the wayside, and I'm focusing more on anything after that, but pre J.J. Abrams. I don't know what your thoughts on that are.
Well, like you, I haven't watched the entire TOS through. I saw episodes when I was a kid in reruns, and caught a couple when I was a teen. But there were 4 that I remember from childhood that I always liked. First is the Squire of Gothos, and that's a great episode. And if you've ever read IQ, the John Delancey, Peter David collaboration.
You know what? I haven't actually read that one, I don't think.
Great book. It's hilarious, well written, ties in with the Squire of Gothos. So
good.
It's a great. It's just a really great story, and I highly recommend it. City on the Edge of Forever. I remember seeing that as a kid, and the whole time travel and everything. That was cool. The Trouble with Tribbles. I remember I've seen it a few times as a kid, and of course the Trials and Tribulations in DS9, brings that back up. It just makes it a classic. And then I couldn't remember the name of this episode, so I had to look it up. It's called Wink of an Eye, and it's an episode where there are aliens who are moving faster than everyone else.
Right.
And there's a one point where they give Kirk and Spock the contaminated water that makes them speed up. So they slowed down everything on the ship. And this is 60s era tech, so all the blinking lights, they slowed down their patterns but I liked the concept. I liked the concept of them moving fast while the rest of the crew was still. And when they're in normal speed, everybody sounds like insects, like the fast aliens sound like insects buzzing around them.
Wow.
And I always thought it was a neat concept. When I looked it up again, like reviews weren't very positive of the episode because the motivation of the antagonists wasn't really good. But the concept of the sped up people, I always thought was neat. And those are my 4 from TOS that I'll bring up.
Well, I find with TOS, I'm always able to point out the one, and I suppose it's telling really that these were the ones that were the good ones, is because they're the ones that are mentioned the most. You've got Space Siege, you've got City on the Edge of Forever, and all of they were kind of like the episodes that were most remembered, and probably because they were the best ones. But in time, in sort of the time that this show was released and the era, it makes it very difficult for modern audiences to actually sit and watch, myself included. And it's not through any kind of snobbery or anything like that, or an over appreciation for what came after. It's more of you have to try and get past the I suppose you could say the campiness. I got in trouble for calling it campy, but there's a little bit of 60s campiness in there, certainly when there's a lot of 60isms in there, certainly with a lot of the female officers. You've got the saxophone playing in the background and they're doing the sexy walk, and there's a lot to get past, but in all honesty, it's charming. It is a charming show.
Yeah. And a lot of the lessons, they were examining the human condition of the day and the political issues of the day, and couching that in like the alien of the week. Which some of those lessons we hope we've already learned, so they seem kind of hokey to us now. But there's still a lot of episodes that are solid. And if you look past like the older aesthetics, the older effects, the older ability to do things, the stories are still solid. Yeah, for sure.
No, absolutely. Beg your pardon. I've got things buzzing everywhere at the moment. Joys of modern technology.
Yeah. I see Joseph has joined us. Hello, Joseph.
Hello, Joseph. Greetings. How are you, my friend? So yeah, I've not limited myself with a number for how many from each series, but the episodes, the format for the previous stream was episodes that I would gladly skip in a binge watch, because you just think, no thanks, and you just switch to the next one. But there was different criteria for me for picking this list, because these were the episodes that stood out for me. Were a little bit different. Provoked an emotional response, which is just crucial in any television show. It has to draw you in and make you feel for the characters. And or spoke to my inner geek. For example, when something happened that you'd not really seen before, or you'd not thought was capable. They were capable of producing. Certainly in the likes of TNG era and stuff, they were very precious with the sets, so they didn't want to damage or destroy them. Slightly less reserved in Voyager, for example, and certainly in Enterprise. But that's my criteria. So what was yours? What would you say built your list? What rules?
My list kind of initially I was like, well, I'll pick the ones that I would just randomly select to watch. Like if I'm saying, I'm like, oh, I want to watch some TNG, I'll pick Darmok because I love that episode, right? But then I started going through the full list because it's been, I don't know, not quite a decade since I went through all of TNG. And so it's been a while since I've watched them all. And as I went through them, I'm like, oh yeah, but this one's good. I like this bit and this one. And so my list kind of grew and grew and grew. So I've got quite a few for every series. My criteria was not so much which are ones that I will just put on a whim, but these are kind of like the ones I wouldn't skip while binge watching. Yeah,
definitely. Well, I suppose we let's go chronologically. I suppose what TNG episodes tickled your fancy?
All right. Well, for season 1, there's only one. Oddly enough, because I didn't really like season 1. It's Where No One Has Gone Before.
Right.
Episode 6. I liked that episode. I liked the idea of the traveler. I liked the idea of the ship going someplace crazy. And back when I was a little kid, I was a bigger fan of Wesley than I am as an adult.
I can relate in some ways to that.
And then, did you have any from season 1?
No, but funnily enough, mine start from season 2. I did like Where No Man's Gone Before because it introduced the idea of the idea of the Enterprise really going where no man's gone before, rather than when the original series did it. There wasn't really any kind of structure or layout to exactly where they were going, or how far they went. There was very little science behind it, whereas TNG, they gave it a little bit more thought. So no, I did appreciate that episode. But I don't have any from season 1 as a personal favourite. It's the issue with season 1 is it's very close to original Star Trek in its style, in its theme, in its look as well. There was a lot. I find it very difficult to gel. My wife and I'm trying to get her through The Next Generation, and season 1 is proving to be quite the hurdle to get past, because even she's going, having seen all the other series, this is the least I can connect with, in terms of seasons.
Yeah. What do you got for season 2?
Well, season 2 for me, one episode stood out as what I personally like to see in a Star Trek episode, and that's a philosophical matter discussed or laid out or broken down, and that was Measure of a Man. Measure of a Man was, to me, where Star Trek it took a new direction in what it was trying to do. Don't get me wrong, it succeeded a fair few times previous to that episode, but that episode was what really caught my attention. The question as to whether an artificial life form can be considered, quote, alive or sentient. Yeah. And it was the first time a Picard speech really sort of rang. The Picard speech bell, Patrick Stewart's delivery and everything like that, and the way it was laid out, I thought was really good. It was ever so slightly, when it came to Maddox, it was ever so slightly, what's the right word? I can't think of the right word. It escapes me. But with Maddox, he was a little bit too crass and sort of in your face with the way he was treating Data. And that was something that season 2 had quite a lot of, especially with Pulaski, she was referring to data as data, and there was absolutely zero sort of understanding or respect for what data was or what we view data as. And Measure of a Man really started to ask that question: what is data? And Picard's whole point of, well, look, data is new life, is a new life form. That's what we are seeking. That's the reason we're here. There it sits, waiting for us to discover it. I found that just an absolutely magic episode from an otherwise struggling season of television.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Measure of Man is on my list. I have two others from season 2. Elementary, My Dear Data. I always enjoyed the idea of the ship creating an AI that starts breaking the rules of the holodeck in order to win the game, so to speak, in a way that was kind of unexpected. But it's like, in retrospect, computer created an opponent that can defeat Data. Okay, I'll let something take over the ship. Just is like such poor programming, poor safeties, poor everything.
Definitely not specific enough with your instruction. It's kind of, I view that as kind of giving an instruction to an autistic child who takes things literally, and Geordie says, give us an opponent capable of defeating Data. Oops.
Yeah.
And the computer taking that so literally. It's like, yeah, that's it. That's what we're going to do. I'm just going to let him have the run of the ship.
They should have did that with the Borg. Computer, create something that'll beat the Borg. Okay, here we go.
Yeah, okay. What can we do? I know. Well, I'm not going to go into Picard. We stay positive in this stream. No, I agree. That's a good one. Yeah.
And my only other one from season 2 is Q Who, because that introduces the Borg, and it puts Picard in a situation where, and this was kind of reflected a bit in Enterprise, and they didn't run with it enough as I thought they should have. But the idea that humans belong out in space, and we can do it. We're great, rah rah, Earth and everything. And this is a situation where Picard is faced with something where it's like, we aren't ready for this. We should not be here, and has to ask Q to take them away from the Borg and return them back to where they were. I thought that was a very good, like, humbling moment for the character, and the realization that, yeah, if you have too much hubris, it will be your downfall, regardless of how successful you are and your intentions and everything. And I always thought that Q Who was a great example of that.
Yeah, I enjoyed Q Hugh Borg. Now, I enjoyed that episode very much for the same reasons, but I enjoyed it also because it was a great piggyback for Star Trek in general, because you now have to follow through with this new enemy, and they did in the best of both worlds, and it laid so many foundations for a lot of other episodes that were absolute Trek classics. I liked with that episode. I liked Q initially toying with them and just saying, "Look, okay, I want to be a member of your crew." But there's always, and I made this point on a previous stream with Spree, with Q, there's always a reason. There's always an end lesson. There's for Picard to learn. In some ways, Q is as much Picard's mentor as Picard is to him. You know what I mean? There's a symbiotic relationship there. Whereas Q is learning more about humans. But Picard is learning more about the universe and how dangerous it can truly be. And I also like the fact that the Enterprise, they didn't take the Enterprise too far. They stayed within the scale of the galaxy. You know, they only went, was it 20,000?
30?
30,000? Yeah, 20, 30,000 light years, and they already encountered the Borg, which means they're very close. They're not that far away. And
Yeah.
you have to start getting ready because they're coming. But what I also like is, say what you will about this episode of Enterprise, Regeneration, I think, backed that up very well with the final moments of that episode where Archie says, look, you know, we, before the ship was destroyed, we detected a signal that goes deep into the Delta Quadrant. A couple of 100 years, this could be a problem. And it turns out, and that sort of seals the loop of having that ship that the Enterprise encounters heading straight for the Federation because of what happened in Enterprise, and then Q essentially having to intervene and say, look, you know, shit, I better warn them. You know, I'm not done with humanity. I've got, you know, I better warn them.
Yeah. The only thing that of Q who I'm saying Q now, that I regret that they didn't expound upon more was the relationship between Q and Guinan.
Guinan, yeah. No,
that seemed like such a big, like, oh, something importance there. We're going to learn something there, and they didn't really do it well in Picard.
Oh no,
with the I Dream a Genie bottle nonsense to summon a Q.
No, that was terrible.
But yeah. Oh, if you can't take a little bloody nose, maybe you ought to go back home and crawl under the bed. Yeah, that was a great line.
Yeah, and it was 18 members of his crew were killed, and that's when, certainly in the Next Gen. I mean, come on, Star Trek before then had an assembly line of red shirts. You had to. The story needed it, but it gave you a sense of scale of the danger that they were facing because of this new enemy they'd never come across. The new enemy that seems technologically at least unstoppable. And that's a very good little Star Trek science fiction twist. You know, you've got aliens that seem somewhat indestructible to bullets, for example, in most Hollywood films. You know, it takes a certain, I don't know, a certain medium to be able to take them down. But with Star Trek, they created such a well-rounded enemy in that episode, an enemy that was, you know, easily adaptable to all forms of technology. Biologically speaking, they were vulnerable, but you had to get damned creative to take them down, and they would always come back time and time again. The best line about how the universe is filled with treasures, both subtle and gross, is brilliant. Yeah. Again, just such lovely attention to detail when it comes to writing. So it's the nuances of understanding the much broader implications of an enemy like this, of space travel in general. What I thought was it was a very well done episode, which would have made my list had I remembered it. No, I can certainly agree with that one.
That's all I have for season 2.
Mm-hmm.
What do you got for 3?
Well, 3. Well, again, it's just 2 of the obvious ones that immediately sprang to mind. Was yesterday's Enterprise, and the reason for that is, again, I like a good, intelligent, well-written, time-messing episode. And that did a very good job of, I think, creating a problem, albeit somewhat temporary. But it was the first time that I had seen the Federation potentially getting destroyed and potentially laying in ruin. But what I liked about yesterday's Enterprise is it spawned a superb little loophole of how to bring Tasha Yar back. Now, I wasn't a massive fan of Tasha Yar's character. I didn't really like Tasha Yar as a character. I thought she was just this sort of very energetic, angry sort of Worf wannabe in some respects. But what I liked about the writing with this episode is, again, what it built. What was built onto it, and that was Seela, and how that happened. Because if you think about it, how else would something like that happen? You have how could Tasha Yar have mothered a baby on Romulus? Because she was dead, and certainly from a writer's point of view, I can only suggest that you must like that kind of thinking, that kind of lateral thinking when it comes to a problem like time travel. And I just found that entire experience to be really sort of intelligent and sort of thinking on a much higher level than most modern day shows.
Yeah, that one is definitely on my list too. I liked how the ship changed. Worf disappeared from the ship because obviously they're at war with the Klingons. There isn't going to be one on the bridge anymore, and just all the little things they did. It was, I liked that episode a lot.
No, it was a good one. And I thought, well, it just wowed me because you think, well, okay, so so the way for people who haven't seen yesterday's Enterprise, let me try and break down this very simple little time travel feature or thing that they've written in. The Enterprise encounters a rift, and a previous incarnation of the Enterprise comes through the rift. The Enterprise that came through the rift was at a battle at it was a Klingon outpost, wasn't it? And they were fighting off the Romulans. I beg your pardon. Yeah, they were fighting off the Romulans, and they fall through a rift, and history remembers that the Enterprise ran from a fight, and that pissed the Klingons off. Hence, there was a Klingon war, and everything changes as soon as that ship comes through the rift. The Enterprise becomes a warship. They've been at war, and the only choice is to send the Enterprise back through. Now, of course, that means Tasha Yar didn't die in Skin of Evil. She's still on the Enterprise. She goes back with the Enterprise to the past, and her existence is secured. It's like borrowing from another universe and just plonking someone in. And I thought that was incredibly clever. My little explanation there doing nothing for it at all. Hello to my son Alex. He's decided to wave on the stream, so there you go.
Hi, Alex.
Hello, Alex. And well, it leads into the next season, but Best of Both Worlds, for obvious reasons, is one of my favourite two-parters.
Yeah, for sure. And that would be on everybody's list, because that was just... And I remember watching the first broadcast of Part 1 and getting to the end, and that to be continued, and you now have to wait months for season 4 to come out. That was quite the television event. I have a few others.
Yeah, absolutely. Go 3. Oh,
I have The Survivors. That's with the elderly couple who survive on the postage stamp on the wrecked planet.
Postage stamp, yeah, and the little music box driving Troy insane. Yeah, that's a good one.
I didn't care much for the Troy subplot, but it was okay to block her out. Like, I don't know how much useful he's hiding something, Captain, would be when it's obvious that somebody must be hiding something for that situation to exist.
The specifics of Deanna Troy. Don't trust him. He's hiding something. What? I don't know. He's feeling a bit shady.
Who watches the Watchers? absolutely brilliant. That is the one where they, the outpost of archaeologists or
The
cultural
Mintakans.
anthropologists,
Yeah,
yes,
they're watching
watching
the
the Mintakans,
Mintakans. Yeah, yeah.
and they end up treating Picard as a god, and almost start a little cult amongst this
Yeah.
primitive species, and that was
Culture Picard.
brilliant.
All hail Picard.
All hail to Picard.
I
Yeah.
just imagine the chant being Picard, Picard. Joseph Dredd. I like the most toys from season 3. That was a good one. With
Yeah.
Faja. Bring out the
Yeah.
Faja. Yeah. Yeah. The
Uh,
Data's kidnapped, isn't he? And
yes.
replaced and made out to be dead.
Yeah. And he makes that decision to shoot him
Yeah.
right at the last moment, but then lies
Yeah.
about the weapon being discharged at the end, because they ask him, they say like, "Oh, it looked like there was a weapon being discharged in the stream." And didn't really talk about
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. You just know. Yeah. He's made, and wouldn't that have been an interesting follow-up episode that you could have done with him doing a Doctor from Voyager and really struggling with what he potentially did or what he was about to do before he was
Yeah.
stopped. You know, he's made a decision to end a life. That I think I wouldn't say missed opportunity. I would say it was probably something that I would I wouldn't have been too offended to have seen.
What else I have on my list? I have The Price, and it's not that great an episode. I like wormhole episodes, anything to do with like spatial anomalies, essentially, and the fact that like this is season 3. I don't think DS9 was started yet at this point.
No, I
can't
believe it
remember.
started on the back of season 5, if I'm not too much mistaken.
Okay, so and Voyager isn't even a gleam in a writer's eye yet.
No.
So the fact that this wormhole goes to the Delta Quadrant was really interesting, and the fact that they those Ferengi got stranded, but then they reappear in Voyager. Somebody remembered and like and found them again, and you know, as big as the Delta Quadrant is, it just happened to be along Voyager's path back to the Alpha Quadrant.
I believe we've covered this before. It just happens to have plonked itself right on Voyager's course. Yeah.
I have Deja Q on my list, and sometimes I made this list and sometimes I don't remember exactly which episode is what just by the title.
What are these?
This is where Q gets his powers taken away.
Fun episode. Yeah, with the Calamarain coming after him when they realise, oh, he's got no powers. Yeah, that I class that as just a good episode, because I like a lot of Q humor. Q humor is great, especially. So, this thing is getting on my nerves now that I have them. Just clever little writing.
And I like the appearance
segments.
by Corbin Burnson at the end as the other Q.
Yeah.
And the way they all address each other as Q. Q!
Q! Yeah. Q! This is Q. Yeah, like you're just gonna tell the difference. They're all called Q, but you're just you're all Q.
Yeah.
I love dual Q episodes. They are a lot of fun because watching the continuum bounce off of itself is brilliant. My wife saying I love Q. Yes, well, I think we all love Q. He's definitely I can't imagine him being played by any other actor at this point.
No. It's just John Delancey does it so well. And he goes full in on that character. Like the book IQ, he co-wrote it with Peter David. So,
it's one I'm gonna have to pick up.
It's an older one. It's from the 90s, I think.
Yeah. Well, I have a shelf full of them downstairs. I've not had a chance to read a lot of them, but I've got a Section 31 books and a lot of DS9 Voyager and Next Gen ones, funnily enough. But yeah.
I have Tin Man on my list. I liked that
Now that's
episode.
oh
That's the
no.
weird ship that psychically communicates with Troy's friend who can't shut off
Uh,
his mind reading abilities.
Harry, is it Harry something? The actor's name. He played the mayor in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and he also had a part in Enterprise Terra Nova. Well, not Terra Nova, Terra Prime. Where he played the.
Right.
Yeah, I forget the name now. Is it Harry something? No. Yes. I can't remember.
Michael
Yeah.
Kavanaugh
Sorry.
or Harry Groner.
Harry Groner. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, he was brilliant in that. I just love the fact that he just bites Riker's head off because Riker's actually just he's thinking something and he just pulls him up on it. He's like, oh, that's embarrassing. I was only thinking it. I wasn't saying it.
Yeah. And I've got Hollow Pursuits because just about every episode with Barclay I like.
Yeah, yeah. But I watched the Barkley one yesterday or the day before. I've had a lot of time to sit and watch Star Trek this last week, and it was what's it called?
Nth Degree.
Nth
That's
Degree.
my
Thank you.
favorite part.
Yeah, and Nth Degree. It was it's when he goes into the holodeck and he's just like utilizing neural interface. His computer just goes, yeah, we don't know how to do that, and he goes, here, oh, no problem, I'll tell you how to build one. And I think that was
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely brilliant. Barkley going from very shy, not very confident, to just suddenly becoming the smartest person in the galaxy. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Um,
And Dwight Schultz does a great job of, he does a great job of playing the neurotic, but then he switches into like the confident, knowledgeable and all-knowing Barclay, and
yeah,
he does it so well. I don't know if you've ever read the book or seen the movie Flowers for Algernon.
no,
It's an old one from the '60s, but it's written as a series of journals from a young man with a learning disability. He basically is on the spectrum, and he's just he doesn't need to be cared for, but he can work a very simple job, and he needs to live in a group home and stuff like that. And he undergoes and the book starts off with him writing journal entries because the doctor wants him to start writing these journal entries, and they're all misspelled and very short and everything. And get him to go through a medical procedure that starts increasing his intelligence exponentially. And so his journal entries start getting more coherent and better. And he starts like understanding that people were often making fun of him that he thought were his friends and things. And ultimately what happens is he basically becomes one of the smartest people alive, but then discovers that the process only lasts for so long and he'll revert and become worse than before. So then the journal entries start falling apart, and he reverts back to not even understanding what had happened or what has gone on. And so it's that
wow,
story kind of reminds me of Flowers for Algernon. And
wow,
that's
yeah.
been done a million times. There was like an episode of The Simpsons where Homer had a crayon pulled out of his nose and then became smart and then chose to get the crayon put
Put
back
back in.
in because the knowledge was miserable, like made
Yeah.
him miserable.
Well, and I
That
often
type of
say
story.
this. I often have this conversation with people, and my wife included. Is just how intelligent would you really want to be? How aware would you really want to be? There's a film and a show called Limitless, and I absolutely loved that. The film was better, I think, because it was a drug that induced intelligence. It allowed you, it opened your brain up much in a Lucy fashion, and you would instantly become addicted to this substance because every 12 hours it would wear off and you'd need to get it again. But would you really want to be so intelligent that you could not read people's minds, but use everything you gathered to build a story of them and to know predictability of them? And you know, use the experience you have to basically predict what they're going to do, and just know whether people would people actually like you and what they say behind your back, and you become a Sherlock Holmes type, high functioning, highly intelligent sociopath, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, the problems that would cause is fascinating. But in terms of Barclay, what I particularly liked about Barclay is the fact that even in the 24th century, people like Barclay are kind of shunned and pushed to one side because they're socially inept or awkward. They're not really helped by certain members of Starfleet. It's just like pushing the problem on. And by the time it gets to Picard's ship, and Picard just says, look, you know, he's chosen the same way of life as we have. He is part of this crew. Let's get to know him. Let's try and draw him out of himself. Let's help the man rather than pushing him on. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah.
But it was very the problem, it was a very human problem with some very typical human responses, even in the 24th century. There's a stigma attached to social awkwardness, you know.
Yeah.
Which I'm
a ship full of nerds.
which is bizarre and ironic, of course, but yeah, absolutely. Yes, we are going chronologically by show. We're not just fixating on the Next Generation, although there are a lot to go through. So I don't know how deep this may be. A 2-part stream, perhaps.
Yes.
Yeah.
What do you got for season 4 besides Nth Degree, which we just
well,
to the Nth Degree?
Yeah. See, season 4, family. Family is the first pick of season 4. Not only because it I believe, don't quote me on this, I might be wrong, but it was the first time I'd seen an episode of Next Gen that wasn't part of a 2-parter follow on directly from another episode, and it was just after the Best of Both Worlds, and the story, I think, is just beautiful. The writing is on point, and the performances of Patrick Stewart and I forget his name, but the guy who played his brother were, I think, just completely flawless. It's one of the episodes. It's almost the least Star Trek episode of the list so far, because it's dealing with an interpersonal drama, which I don't mind. I do criticize NuTrek for it, but I certainly don't mind it being in Star Trek. But it was a beautifully told story. I mean, you got your sort of subplots as well. You've got your B and C plots with Worf and in general. One I think the weakest point was the Crusher side of things. You know, they didn't really pay it enough attention. I don't think that could have been potentially a different episode in itself. But the way that Picard manages to reconcile with his family, certainly off the back of such a terrible incident, a personal incident to Picard, and it shows Picard with an air of weakness about him. I thought was really, really well done.
Yeah, and it was nice to have that continuity of, Picard just went through a major trauma. He didn't just bounce back and go back to the chair and start running the ship the next day.
Yeah.
And
there was something to get over. There was something to get past. But more, he was just wanting his brother to look after him. Which I think we all, occasionally in life, we all just want someone to come to us and say, look, you need help, don't you? There's always that need there at certain points in people's lives. And I think that was a tremendous episode. And it was the admission from Picard is that he wasn't strong enough to fight the Borg off. He wasn't strong enough, and people died. he's killed all these people, and that is something that is carried on throughout the Next Generation and Star Trek, kind of to an obsessive point later on in the seasons.
Yeah. I had the episode after that, Brothers. I liked
Yes.
Noonien Soong appearance and him sending the homing beacon for Data, and how Data just takes over the ship and locks everyone out.
Scary.
I kind of like
Yeah.
that, and Lore, of course, Lore getting the emotion chip and running away and everything. I thought I liked that episode. I have a Devil's Due as well.
Yeah.
Because that's the Ardra episode.
Yeah, I mentioned that one last week in my stream last week as being one of the better ones, because it dealt with theology and religion and belief, and how science is coming close to those things even in the 24th century.
Yeah,
it was fun. It was just fun as well.
What's the Arthur C. Clarke quote? Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a whole episode based around that one line, that one quote. Absolutely brilliant. Jeremy Kemp played Robert Picard. Thank you for that. There's a fun episode, and it's not something aside from the likes of Harry Mudd and characters of that nature. You'd never really seen a con artist trying to con an entire planet. I mean, the gall of someone to try and con an entire planet. It was the most Ferengi anyone has ever been without actually being a Ferengi.
Yeah. Well, I love the court scene at the end. I love when they figure stuff out and Picard is able to replicate the trick. I always thought that was pretty good.
I thought Data was good in that, because he just go that's quite enough, Captain. You know, he was again. The fact that Picard was his superior did not play into it at all. Data was there and he was doing a job.
Impartial. Yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Definitely a good one.
I have Clues, which is a great episode. Excellent mystery episode. One of those, like, something's happened and we don't know, but there's all these little clues that something has happened. And...
yeah, I like a good mystery. Yeah, and I think again speaks to the audience, doesn't it? Because the audience like a good mystery. The crew of the Enterprise love a good. Oh, Picard loves a good mystery. I like a good mystery, and I like the story is written with some sense of logic. If Data is given an order not to reveal something, he will go to his grave with that information. Yeah. And he's the only one who will do it. And that reveal at the end is, you know, when he says, who ordered you? Well, you did, sir. It's like, holy crap. And that's what I love about Star Trek. The writing comes full circle and everything fits. Something that's lacking in other Star Trek shows, but everything is paid off. It pays itself off very well, and that episode was very good.
And my last one for season 4 is one of my favorites of all time. I can go back and watch this one over and over. First Contact.
First Contact. Was that the Riker in the hospital? In the hospital. Yes, because he's an alien, but they don't know he's an alien, and he's in the hospital. Yeah, I'm familiar with that one.
But I like how it starts off with, you know, you're on the alien world. I can't remember her name. I know the actress. She appeared in Quantum Leap in some of my favorite episodes. But
I know
she's the scientist who's developing the warp drive, and when Picard shows up and we are the aliens to them in this episode. They're and what their politics have to try and decide to do with this knowledge that they aren't alone in the universe, and there's other beings out there, and And the whole thing with Riker too, like the whole like, oh my god, we got like an alien in a hospital, the government's captured an alien, and
It's their Roswell, essentially.
yeah, that nurse was BB Newworth.
Really?
Lilith Crane from Cheers. Yeah, the nurse who hooks up with Riker to that he uses to escape.
It's just Riker hooking up with people.
Yeah,
it's just one of the most common occurrences in Next Gen. It was always Riker straddling a chair and Riker just hooking up, and it didn't matter whether he was hooking up with someone who wanted to give him a device to infiltrate the Enterprise, or whether it was an androgynous group of aliens, or an Irish farmer's daughter, or anything like that. Riker just sees anything walking and just goes, you know what, I'm gonna hit that.
Yeah. And while his ex is there on the bridge right next to him, who can sense his emotions the whole time.
You kind of feel sorry for Troy in some ways, because she's having to sit there and go, oh, God, he's at it again. Oh, get your mind out of the gutter. Every time the view screen comes on and there's a beautiful woman there, she just goes, really?
And it goes like a lot of people say that TNG really hit its stride in the third season, and I guess with my list of favorites from each season, like I had 1 from season 1 and 3 from season 2, and like 5 or 6 from season 3, and then the list just gets longer with each season.
Yeah.
So that was my season 4. What do you got for season 5?
Well, without surprise, Darmok.
Oh yeah, first on my list.
It's going to be there, isn't it? On anybody's list, that's going to be there, simply because I've never. It's rare, not in Star Trek, but it is rare to come across such a well-written idea. And people, one thing people have said to me previously when it comes to Darmok is, okay, yes, they speak in metaphor. It's not known. It's just a garbled mess. And people go, yeah, but they're still using English. It's like, no, let me explain something to you. The universal translator is translating their language into words that we can understand. But because those words are in metaphor form, those words are structured in a metaphor form, we don't understand what the context of that metaphor is, so we can't actually talk to them. Yes, we can. They can speak our words, and we can speak our words, and they'll understand. Their universal translator is probably doing the reverse, and we're speaking their language. But the idea of Darmok and the aliens with Darmok, and the problem is not necessarily a word communication. It's a sentence structure and what it is they're trying to say, not what they're saying. That is the main problem with Darmok. Or main problem in Darmok, should I say. Excuse me. But yeah, Darmok, absolutely superb episode. Again, Patrick Stewart absolutely at his best. And yeah. I always like Next Gen when they go out in the field and they do some location shooting, and it's actually out there, not in a soundstage. And what was it? It was Paul Winfield, wasn't it? The alien. Paul Winfield? Something
I'm not sure.
Yeah. I'm either right or wrong about that. It was, but yeah, superb job from both actors. It was absolutely a phenomenal episode, and that realization of when they're able to finally communicate because Picard understands what it is they're trying to say. This is that moment of, yes, we finally understand. And again, if a story can do that, and if a story can make me go, yes, now I understand, then that's where it shines for me. It's not, I don't want subverted expectations with anything that I'm watching. If anything, the satisfaction you derive from watching a show is expectations being met. If you're going to subvert my expectations with Darmok, for example, then you're going to write Darmok and you're going to get the revelation at the end, and you're going to have the captain just suddenly go berserk and kill Picard. Well, that's subverting my expectations, but it's not entertaining me, and it's not. It's the relationship between what they're showing me, or between them and me, what they're showing me and what I'm receiving from them, puts you on a level with them. And if you subvert expectations, it's a cold slap in the face. So that's where I think modern Trek goes wrong. But with classic Trek, certainly like Darmok, it was so well executed, and it left me with such a good feeling at the end, and such a somber end, yet kind of hopeful at the same time. So yeah, it is one of my favorites.
Yeah. I have, after that, Silicon Avatar.
Yeah.
That's I like the fact that it's a mystery that is unresolved. Like the crystalline entity is destroyed before they can get any answers.
Yeah, it is. It's the most un-Starfleet way to handle anything. And it's very it's the polar opposite of what you'd expect to happen in Star Trek, because they're going to seek out new life and they're not going to destroy it. But it's also that, isn't it sort of an interesting parallel how people say that we view Star Trek, or this kind of Star Trek, with rose tinted glasses, whereas we don't. But then Star Trek doesn't view itself with rose tinted glasses. It doesn't view humans with rose tinted glasses. They're still deeply flawed people. It's just that en masse we've managed to figure it out, but we still have the individual problems that we have. And we still have our Michael Eddingtons. We still have our corrupt admirals. We still have people who want power, but we are just so much better at being vigilant enough to stop it in its tracks. But with Silicon Avatar, a person in a position of power managed to abuse that power in an effort to seek revenge, and ultimately found that it was probably the most empty gesture that she could have made, because it awards her nothing other than the loss of her career and probably the loss of her freedom. What a great choice that was.
Yeah. Disaster is a solid episode. Lots of different stories going on.
Mm-hmm.
And some good interplay on the bridge. They didn't know if anybody was alive or dead below, so they were trying to make decisions, and based on whether or not they would kill people. And I think that's when Molly O'Brien is born, right?
Yes. Yeah, Worf
helps. Worf was there for delivery. Yeah.
Again, just a very Klingon way of why is it not happening?
Yes.
Just the Klingon impatience there. This is not the way the simulations want. This baby is not prompt.
Yeah.
Absolutely brilliant. Disaster for me was it was an episode that didn't need a budget to show you the damage to the Enterprise. It was always inferred damage. Yes, okay. The most that they could do is put the blast door down and turn the lights down. Have a few flashing consoles. They couldn't really show you bulkhead damage, which became more prevalent in other Star Trek shows. But I like the implied damage, and I like who doesn't enjoy when Data's head comes off?
Yes. I was always a fan of A Matter of Time.
That's the
Matt Frewer.
Matt Frewer, yeah, that's Matt Frewer Berlinghoff Rasmussen.
Rasmussen.
Yeah.
Yes.
The guy that's from the future past future sort of. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm surprised they didn't touch on that in Enterprise, because I believe the time ship he stole was from the same time period as Daniels, or possibly the Captain Braxton from Voyager.
Yeah, that there could have been an interesting tie-in there, because he's
Matt Frewer still acts. He's still out there doing stuff all the time. He's in everything.
Yeah, he's one of those in everything actors. You know, he's always going to be. He's somewhere in Law and Order. You'll see him in Law and Order, or you'll see him in Cheers, or you'll just see him in the background somewhere, just being Matt Frewer. He did a great job in that episode. I really enjoyed that. And I liked the harshness of Picard's punishment for him. Is essentially, you're not going home.
Yeah,
that's it. Plain and simple. You are not going home. We can't allow you to go home. But it also leaves a little bit of a plot hole, because because after the episode, you sort of know that there is a ship, a time traveling ship in the past somewhere that someone's going to find, because that's where it's gone.
Yeah.
And you can only hope that thing gets buried enough to not affect your time. Could be an interesting Time's Arrow kind of effect, I suppose. But no, great one.
Another time one that is brilliant, one I will put on again and again to watch. Cause and
Effect. Yeah, it's on my list too. Again, the one episode of Star Trek where I genuinely could not believe what I had seen pre-credits. I did not want to believe it. I did not want to even contemplate the implications to the Enterprise actually being destroyed. And I believe that's the first time you see the Enterprise destroyed. There is no other time prior to that where you see the destruction so blatantly clear of everyone dying. And then there's just the confusion when the credits roll back. And you're like, they're alive. Is this what happened leading up to it? And then it happens again, and you're like, oh, okay. But then the episode, because they can get away with it for the beginning credits, because you can splice the episode to have the credits in between. But then it happens again, and you're like, okay, now I'm getting frustrated. What is going on here?
Yeah.
And it's the perfect Groundhog Day episode, I suppose.
Yes.
I always enjoy those episodes in television, because you can see the actors really getting into having fun with repeating the same process and not having it be outtakes.
Yeah. Stargate did a good one, I remember. If you have got to it or not, I don't remember what season. It's been so long since I've watched.
We are currently on season 2, but we are sadly missing it at the moment, so we're waiting for it to come back, so then we can continue. But you'll find a lot of the shows from the 90s all have similar episodes to one another. They've all got a time loop episode or a Groundhog Day episode. They've all got a character swap episode. They've all got the end of days episode, or Jimmy 77. The First Duty was the best Wesley episode. The First Duty. What season was that?
Was that the cadets with the?
That was the cadets.
The maneuver.
Yeah, with not Tom Paris in it.
Yeah.
Due to the royalties, I believe they couldn't use Tom Paris. They couldn't use Tom Paris. Sorry, no, they couldn't use Nicholas Locarno.
Or Locarno.
Yeah, it's Nicholas Locarno. They couldn't use him as a character in Voyager, so they just created Tom Paris, who had the same backstory. But the First Duty, that was a good one, and a good Picard speech.
Yes,
there's always a good Picard speech. What
else you got for 5?
I'm just having, because I haven't put. I've literally got a list of episodes. I cannot. They're sort of bleeding together. Just bear with me one moment. with season 5, I found that there were a lot of not forgettable episodes, but more off topic story episodes. A lot of how do I put this? Singular stories. You know, there were a lot of good ones. One of my I don't know why, but it's one of my not favourites, but certainly more preferable episodes was Imaginary Friend.
That's on my list. Yeah.
Because Imaginary Friend was quite menacing, and there's something I how about you? You've gone blurry, by the way. I'll just keep talking. I had to swap my camera out because it kept going blurry on me. But it was the first time. It's children playing menacing is something that I find deeply disturbing. You know, it's certainly in most good horror films. It's always a child saying something that they shouldn't really be aware of, or behaving in a manner, or being aware of something that they shouldn't really be aware of. You know.
Yeah.
You know, the horror story trope of what's Billy saying to you? He's not saying anything. He's just stood right next to you, and you know as an adult he's not there, but the kid can see him. That sort of situation being in Star Trek, and I thought that was really good. And I don't like seeing children scared, even pretend scared. I just don't like seeing it. But I think all the young actresses did a great job with that. And the concept was I thought was very appealing.
They could have played it more on the horror angle and
Yes.
had a good scary story out of it, because creepy kids are always
too disturbing.
Horror gold.
Absolutely. Yeah. Come play with us, Danny. I thought Iborg was good. Iborg was a good one.
Yeah, I like
that. Could you
Nothing...
bear with me one moment? I'm just going to mic.
For sure. All right. What do I have next on my list? I have The Next Phase. And, or I guess I could talk about Iborg until Richard gets back. I really liked it. I liked the idea of the magic pattern that they came up with that would cause the Borg to get stuck in a recursive loop. I thought that was brilliant. Welcome back. You may have muted yourself. You were not muted.
Okay.
Oh, okay, I hear you. So it's all good.
Okay. Was I muted before?
No. You were never muted.
Okay. Can you just keep the stream going? I just have to deal with one thing, and I'll be right back. I apologize for doing this, but yeah, I know. Just give me 2 minutes, and I will be right back.
No worries.
I appreciate this. 1 minute.
See, Jimmy says that it should have been Tom Paris. Yeah. Well, I guess it would have been Nick Locarno or whatever his name was, because that was written first, and they changed his name to Tom Paris for Voyager to avoid the royalties thing. But that would have been a much nicer tie-in, for sure. And kept that character of this guy who doesn't play by the rules or who's a screw up or whatever, which they just transferred Tom Paris, but then there's like 2 identical screw ups in the Federation and in Starfleet. So yeah, definitely it would have been nice if they kept that continuity. See anything else that was said here in the chat? Oh, that's what you meant. Yeah. Okay. No, that makes sense. All right. We're now here at the Clayton show, apparently. The next episode I had on my list, I'll just go ahead. I had The Next Phase. I believe that is where Geordi and Ro Laren put out of phase. And it's one of those wonderful episodes that all sci-fi shows have it, where it's like, I can walk through walls, but I don't fall through floors. Even though I'm on a multi-deck starship, I still need to take the turbo lift. That's always been you kind of have to suspend just enough disbelief to enjoy that episode. But I liked the episode. I liked the fact that Ro thought they were dead and figured that it was their job that they were ghosts, and that they had to set or do whatever that they had to do in order to move on. I'm talking the next phase right now, which is my next episode.
Right, okay. Apologies for that. It's always interesting when people just show up out of the blue, and they need to tell you something. So, yep. I'm back. Sorry about that, Clayton. I do apologise.
No worries.
The next phase. The next phase, that was Geordie and Ro, yeah. That was a good one. Yeah.
And like I said, you have to suspend the disbelief, because like every sci-fi show that has the person put in a situation where they can walk through walls, they can't walk through floors, and they don't fall through floors.
Yeah, there is a bit of a problem there, because on Earth you could sort of get away with it, I suppose, because gravity and all of that. But you're talking about a ship with decks, and a floor that you have to fall through the floor. It always interesting, because you can go out of the ship as well, because you can get pushed out of the ship.
Yeah,
but they don't really trip over, and if they did, what would happen? You know,
I love them setting off the phaser on overload in 10 forward during the wake.
Yeah,
because everybody's just partying and there's this huge explosion, but it's in a different phase, so it doesn't affect them. They're all just still.
Yeah, I enjoyed that, because there were parts that were frustrating for me, because I don't know, I find things like that frustrating when I'm just going, here's what I would do in that situation. So you've got Geordie, and he's trying to get Data, he's putting his thing through the console, his hand through the console, and Data's shooting the piece of equipment that's at him. And he gets him, and he says, "Oh, it's not as easy to push through anymore. What you did, that did," and it just goes on this tangent instead of continuing to create more, of the particles. He just goes on this tangent saying, "You've just got to do this. You've just got to do this," and then Data just goes, "I'm done."
Yeah.
And you're like, no, now you've got no way of telling him to continue. And, because imagine if you could, it was just a few seconds off him being able to push buttons, you know. So there are a little bit frustrations.
Data recognizes patterns, and Geordie didn't try to do anything like a repeating pattern, something that would catch Data's interest and be like, "This is strange. Why is this?"
Draw.
Yeah.
just write G plus R. And there was a few little, I'd say, annoyances when it came to things like that, but it was still an enjoyable little romp. And how they're dealing with how they both had different attitudes towards death, whereas Ro kind of welcomes it, probably because of her upbringing and her life so far, and Geordie, who was born blind and has been wearing a visor for most of his life, just wants to get the most out of life and wants to continue living it. He's not so easily accepting of the outcome.
Yeah. And plus for him, it's like, I'm dead and I still have the visor.
Yeah.
Afterlife sucks.
Yeah. You would sort of have that, wouldn't you? Yeah. If you lost an arm, a leg, or your sight, or your hearing, and there's this ghost who can't hear anything or can't see anything.
Yeah.
You wouldn't go bumping into walls, but Oh, good God.
I have, and of course, from season 5, The Inner Light.
That is on my list. That's my next episode on my list. Again, It's not the the focus is it's a good story about a man who has to essentially forget an entire lifetime because he's now in a new situation.
Yeah.
And although, I mean, when I first saw it, the first time I saw it, I didn't understand what was going on until much later in the episode. And you're talking the sort of final, scene, you know, where they're explaining it to him. I didn't understand what was going on because I was very switched off and very unintelligent at that point in my life. I wasn't really consciously aware of a lot of things that were going on. Certainly in television shows, it would take me quite a while to cotton on to what was actually happening. But obviously watching it with a different pair of eyes, you're seeing a much broader point of view with the episode, and you're seeing that he's living this new life in at an incredible speed, which is normal for him, but not for the rest of the crew. And you realise, well, he's not living a life; it's all happening in his head, much like O'Brien in, is it Hard Time in DS9. Yeah. It was all compacted into just a group of memories in his brain, but for him, he lived that lifetime in 25 minutes. But the one flaw I would say, well, it's not necessarily a flaw, but the one thing again would be the follow through in his return to his life. I'd like to have seen the consequences of that bleed through a few episodes, you know, that he's having to remember certain things. He wouldn't just, like you said, with the best of both worlds, he wouldn't just bounce back into the captain's chair. It'd be a case of, well, actually, I've got to try and remember how to fly the ship first, you know, or, you know, I don't remember my access codes, or something with some longevity to some long-term impact. I think would have been nice to see off the back of that episode. Oh, and I say that in a non-critical way because I absolutely adore the episode. It's one of my all-time favorite episodes of Star Trek.
Yeah, like they could have carried it forward with like him trying to order the wrong type of food from the replicator. Like from his favorite food from that lifetime, and which of course the replicator knows nothing about.
No, and it's not as if he would know how to program it, because he wouldn't have the chemical formula for it. He wouldn't have the chemical structure, because that species wouldn't have been far enough along, possibly in that area of science, to be able to tell what made up what, you know. A very, very interesting episode, and it's the fact that if you think about a species that knows it's going to come to an end, it knows there's no way of surviving its own supernova. You know that your sun's dying and the planet as a whole is going to go, and the race is going to become extinct. That, wow. What would you do in those situations? Of course, you'd make you'd have a message in a bottle essentially and send it out into space.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
In the hope that someone would find it enough to remember you by. Superb episode and so well written. And again, Patrick Stewart. I mock Patrick Stewart's modern Picard only because of how surely ridiculous it is, but Patrick Stewart is one of the best actors I have ever seen on television and movie. He is just the best. He's one of the best.
Yeah.
He's an absolute gentleman. He's so talented and he performs so well in Star Trek. And I think that points to the source of my bitterness, is because I know he can do better than what he did in Picard.
Yeah. Yeah. He's not like the person they picked for Michael Burnham,
No.
who had never done Star Trek before and whatever. Yeah, he yeah, you almost got to think that there's something wrong with him, because he could do better. He's done better.
Yeah.
And whether it's age or whether it's his own, maybe he didn't like the character, because hey, in the 80s and 90s, that was just their job, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
they go to the office, they pretend to be somebody for 8 hours or 10 hours, and they go home, and it doesn't mean as much to them as it did to the people they were doing it for.
Yeah, it's not as if it's a geek or a nerd getting into a Star Trek show and acting. It's a person who is acting in the Star Trek show, and at the end of the day, would you want to live and breathe the company that you work for every waking moment of your life? Probably not. You probably wouldn't want to be known. You'd want to be known as Clayton Rumley. You wouldn't want to be known as a constituent, a part of an amazing thing that you are part of. You want to be thought of as Clayton Rumley, and I get that for most actors. It's why I think I would probably leave actors alone if I saw them in the street, or just give them a nod and say thank you. But I wouldn't stop them and say, "Can I get a photo?" Because how many people would do that in their lives? And they'd probably grow weary. And you see these actors getting narky about it. You think, well, wouldn't you if you just wanted to go to the grocery store and pick up your bread?
Yeah.
But they do also have to think on the flip side of that. Yes, I am absolutely loved and well thought of with an awful lot of people in the world.
And in a way that the vast majority of the population will never get to experience.
Absolutely.
You're never going to be recognized on the street. People aren't going to stop you for your autograph or anything.
No, absolutely. And I don't think I think the ratio for that to happen, the amount that you of fame you would have to accrue to be noticed in the street, you're talking millions of people. Yeah, millions of people would have to know you for the chance of one person interacting with you in a year. The ratio is just insane. But no, Patrick Stewart he's a tremendous actor, and I've got nothing but respect for him as an actor. As a person, I don't know him from the next guy. I don't know much about him, and I don't presume to know much about Patrick Stewart. But he just knocks it out of the park in that episode.
Yeah, absolutely
fantastic. And that was that season 5 or season 6? The Inner Light.
That was the penultimate of season 5.
It was the penultimate. Yeah, you're right. And then it was Time's Arrow.
Yes, which is on my list, the last one.
Yeah, Time's Arrow was bloody good. Gets panned a lot.
A lot of time travel episodes in season 5. Or time-related episodes.
Yeah. There's another time travel one. Oh, really? Again? No.
Yeah, for all the times they complained about Voyager showing up on the time enforcement people's radar.
Just quite season 5 of Star Trek: The Next Generation. No, Time's Arrow was a good one. Great opening mystery. Shocking opening mystery. Very quickly explained and revealed. Where you think, well, okay, so Data's head's been found in a cavern that hasn't been opened since the 1900s. And then Data's in the 1900s. You think, well, this is going to have some... this is going to be resolved fairly quickly. And I think if they could have had... it could have made that particular reveal a B plot of one episode. They could have followed up and have it in the latter part of the 7th season. And people going... Bloody hell, yes, I remember that. That was the mystery that was never solved, But it needed to be a two-parter, obviously, to go from one season to another.
Yeah.
But it was a great, and you see a photo of real life Mark Twain, and you think, bloody hell, they got it pretty close. Aside from being played by the chat will probably help me out with the actor's name. I've got brain fog today, but he's Jerry something. It's a Sunday. It's a day of rest for my brain as well. But yeah, he did such a superb job of playing Clemens, and they got the look right. They got. It was lovely to see. And how they introduced Guinan being in the past, I thought was fantastic. You had this, you had Whoopi Goldberg essentially playing slightly, just naive to the future Guinan. She was still Guinan. She was still as wise as Guinan ever was. She was just in a different time. And making it a self-fulfilling loop, I thought was fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I like that aspect. I like the fact that Data had to reflect on, like, he technically understood that as a machine he could be immortal, but now here's direct evidence that he's going to die and die soon based on the time of death of his body or his head. And I found it a little weak that all Picard had to do was jam some metal into Data's head and he'd have a message.
It's one of those moments where they inject a good amount of sound effect to a simple action. And you see this all over Star Trek, they'll simply just squeeze something like this and it'll go ding, and you'll be like, there's nothing there. It's just a frame or something. And seeing him, it almost looked like he was scribing on Data's brain with a iron filing. Hello, Reaver of Jill Sandwiches, welcome. Hello, Jackie Joses, welcome. Thank you for your comments so far.
I'm a captain, Jackie. It's red. It's TNG red.
It is TNG red. I decided not to. Well, to be fair, I was going to wear my captain's dressing gown because it was actually quite cold up here earlier. Maybe I should. I'll put it on so we can both be captains. There we go. Why not? There we go. Both rocking our captain's outfits. There we go. At least if I started the stream looking somewhat normal, people will still watch it. Where's me rank? There's me rank. I've got bigger pips. There we go. Yeah, but yeah, I'm about to overheat, so I'll probably take it off soon. But yeah, Times Arrow, good one.
Yeah. And that moves us into season 6. I have Relics. I liked Relics. I liked the Dyson Sphere. I liked their clever way of bringing Scotty back.
Yes, yeah, that was high functioning writing right there. That was thinking outside of the box, with that, because you're thinking, okay, so you brought McCoy in to the first episode of The Next Generation, but he's an old man, and he's on his last leg.
Corpse there. Yeah.
You're a good girl, boy. Do you well, and so okay, Leonard, Mr. McCoy, you've let's get you back to bed, shall we? And you say, oh, bless him. And they've done Spock, obviously, because Spock's pretty much he's a Vulcan and he lives a lot longer, so they could get away with that. But how do you bring Scotty into it? Well, you just focus on the fact that Scotty was an engineer, and if anyone can build a transport, a cycler transporter to build a time machine that only pulls you into the future, it's going to be Scotty. Whether that was the intention or not, it's a very, very clever idea and very well executed, and kind of bittersweet in some respects, because you realize that you're a fossil in another time, and it's sort of
A Rip Van Winkle type of story.
yeah, yeah. It's what do you do now that you are practically speaking useless? You know, yes, you've got the experience, and you've got. And I've watched Dave Cullen's video a few days ago where he's talking about Star Trek Beyond, and you've got Khan, who was unfrozen by RoboCop, and he was brought in to build this amazing battleship for RoboCop, and but why would you want Khan anywhere near modern technology, considering he's 200 years out of date? You know, and that's sort of got me thinking in a Relics kind of way, because at least Scotty, it's written that Scotty knows that he's out of touch. I mean, when he opens up the Enterprise's engine, he says, "Do you know your dilithium crystals are going to fracture?" And it's just like, no, don't touch it. You don't know what you're doing. You know, I found that really amusing, but kind of bittersweet. I forget the right word escapes me, but it was sentimental, very sentimental.
Yes.
But yeah, it's
the
beautiful.
fact that we all get older, and we'll all eventually be out of touch, and the rest of the world continues moving on past us.
Yeah. The amazing parallels with middle age, I think. I feel out of touch with technology.
I've got I watched this episode a couple nights ago, actually. Schisms.
That's the kidnap one, isn't it? Where they're all getting. Is that the one where they're all getting kidnapped and by the clicky, the clickers? I'll call them the clicky. Yeah.
Yeah, that creeped me out as a kid.
Yeah, me too. Absolutely.
It's funny because you watch the holodeck scene, and so I've been a programmer for a long time. I've since the 90s, and so like you watching that back then, be like that's not how you'd interface with a computer. And now with our AI generative images, that's exactly how you interface with a computer. Give me a table, make it shorter, make it metal. And sooner or later, somebody's going to start tying that stuff together to where you can have like the VR holodeck experience. Where you can be like, give me a forest, make that tree an elm, add some squirrels, and it'll just do it. And
have you just come up with an innovative idea for a VR game? Who wouldn't want that? Just a VR game set in Star Trek's holodeck, and you just go, right, it's time to spawn anything I want.
Yes.
I guarantee sales.
Yep. Well, everybody will just be like, feature Kira naked, please. That's what it'll do.
Yeah, I have to agree with that. Yeah. Good choice. No, good episode. Sadly, never followed up on again.
Yeah, they would have been interesting villains to bring back. They set the probe out.
Yeah,
and yeah, they would have been, and they're kind of terrifying. They don't speak. They just click, which makes them sound insect-like and very alien.
And it's very sort of. It's very indicative of a species that has no empathy and no ethics. It's kind of what we, it's kind of how we view potential alien life, especially when it comes to abductions and stuff like abduction stories. If they are to be believed, then aliens are pretty much not any kind of being that you'd want to get to know, because they lack empathy and for what it is that they're doing. We are simply subjects for experimentation, and their motivation is unwritten as well. You don't know what their motivation is. You're left. I like a good mystery that isn't solved at the same time as a mystery that is solved. It leaves a lot of open questions, and in some ways, I'm kind of glad that they ended up not answering them. They
had like prosthetic masks for the actors playing the clicky aliens, but they they could have just as easily left the hoods, keeping their face completely shrouded in darkness, and
Yeah.
it would have been just as creepy.
Mm.
And I think one of the most frightening scenes is the holodeck scene, because
Yeah.
you start off with like this benign table,
Mm-hmm.
and by the end, as you see everybody visibly getting more and more panicked as
Yeah.
they're doing this, you end up with this like instrument of torture
Yeah.
at the end in front of them in this dark room with the clicking noises, and it's like, we've all been in this room.
Mm.
And just like, yeah, that'd be bloody scary.
It made my my hairs stand on end. It gave me goosebumps. But also, what I liked about that as well was the fact that it wasn't just the crew it was happening to. It wasn't Starfleet crew it was happening to. It was happening to civilians as well. Everybody on that ship was fair game for abduction. So I liked that. It wasn't just Starfleet crew members getting abducted. It was civilians on the ship as well. They were indiscriminate with who they were taking, and I thought that was really good, really good. Genuinely sort of tense and horrifying at times. But again, the same effect can was achieved with that episode without the need of gore or body horror or shock horror or anything like that. It was literally just creepy and disturbing, and implied more than it showed. I liked it. It was good.
Yes. Yeah, they could talk about the fact that Riker's arm had been surgically removed and reattached, or amputated and reattached, and we didn't need to see it.
No, the idea that could happen was probably not something that anyone watching Star Trek would have really considered. Okay, so you've been kidnapped and they just cut your arm off just to see what would happen. It's a bit dark for Star Trek. But don't worry, they reattached it, but that pardon my French, they're shit at it, and they misaligned the bone. Found that very, they're very, very disturbing, very disturbing.
Next on my list is True Q.
Ah, yes.
Because it's a Q episode. I like Q episodes, even though the backstory of this girl, the parents deciding to live amongst humans, the Q parents, and her having the powers of Q, even though she was a child, I can't remember how that worked into. Was she a human child of former Qs? It's been a while since I've seen it, but when I think about it now, I think about what a big deal they made about having a child Q in Voyager.
Yes.
In the Q and the Gray. That was like a huge deal. And then when I think about this now with True Q, I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen it. If
they were Q who had, they did have a child together as Q, because they chose to live on Earth with their powers, but they couldn't resist the temptation to use the powers when they weren't allowed to use the powers. So I think she is a child of 2Q. Because it always struck me as odd, because the Q can remove powers from other Q. The Continuum has the power to remove your powers if you're a Q. So it always struck me as, well, as odd as to why they wouldn't just have removed the parents' powers. Almost like they were toying with them. Okay, you want to go and live with humans, that's laughable. Why do you want to go and live with a lower life form and settle on Earth? All right, fine, you can go and do that, but you use your powers once, there's going to be trouble. When they can just remove the powers and remove the possibility and say, right, you want to leave the Continuum. So maybe there were some bigger implications for leaving the Q Continuum. Because the Q Continuum has always been very precious about enforcing things on other Qs, which is going to reference an episode we'll get to probably a little bit later. for another show. But it was I liked it because it was somewhat playful, but had very heavy undertones to it, and very heavy answers to questions. And the consequences of you using the abilities that you have, and the complication, and you understand the queue a little bit more. I like that aspect. You understand the queue a little bit more as to and why they can't just go around fixing everything.
Yeah. Matthew in the chat says Schism is like the opposite of newer shows in that the newer shows seem to show you when they need to tell and tell you when they need to show. You'd have the arm removed and blood everywhere. And all I can say is Echeb.
Well, you had to say it, didn't you? You had to say Echeb. Yeah. I am getting warm. I'm gonna decaptain myself for a little bit. No, I agree with that, Matthew. I really do. And I think that's got something to do with people's attention spans lately. They seem to be dwindling somewhat.
Or the desensitization. Like since that's TNG, we've had like Saw and Human Caterpillar and all sorts of nonsense movies that are just very gory and very graphic and that's what they've got to compete with for attention and to get discussion going and stuff like that. So yeah, let's dismember this person in an episode of Star Trek because that'll get people talking, just like in Saw.
Yeah, no, you're right. There's definitely a shift to having to show things. I much prefer things when they're implied or they're left slightly ambiguous, so you can use your imagination a little bit. But any more from season 6?
Yes, I've got a few. I have got Rascals. I liked Rascals. I thought it was a fun episode. The actress who plays the young Guinan was the actress who played the young whatever character she was in Sister Act.
Oh, right. Okay. That's interesting.
And she was still an actress, and I was kind of disappointed they didn't pick her to play Guinan, the younger Guinan, in Picard season 2.
Would it have made sense? Yeah, absolutely.
It would have been a nice nod to continuity, even if she really doesn't look like an adult will be now. I thought it would have been far too much credit given to them there. Yeah, and I have on my list, and I have it there, but I wanted to. Quality of life. That's the Exocomp episode.
Yeah,
I thought that was an interesting AI one.
Yeah, it was. It was different. It was different, wasn't it? And the Exocomps, I thought were for machine, they were actually quite cute little things, really.
Yeah.
And very sort of well designed.
I know in Lower Decks, one of them becomes like almost like a villain.
Yeah. I watched the Voyager episode, the Voyager celebration episode, whatever they want to call.
I haven't seen it yet.
Oh God. It's basically like a tour of Voyager's entire run, all in one episode, with really? Every beat being a comedy moment. It's horrendous. I didn't enjoy it. For a long time I've been wanting to do a video on it, but I just haven't had the time or the mental capacity to think about that. How much I really despised that episode of that terrible show. But yeah, the Exocomps were very basic design, hardly any moving parts. And what I liked about them is they replicated the tool that they needed. At the time, they had mini replicator in the front, and it was literally like R2-D2. If R2-D2 had a replicator, how many things could he access with that multi-access thing he's got? But no, an Exocomp can, just make any tool that they want. And I thought that was absolutely genius for a little machine. And, you know, the fact that they had the two little feet, but they didn't move. They didn't need to. It didn't need to walk. It didn't need to do anything. It could just fly and hover.
Yeah.
Very intelligent design there. And a very good story in terms of asking the question. Again, in Measure of a Man style, is this a sentient being? Have you created a sentient being that's self-aware? And then what are the implications of that? Well, it mirrors a lot of Measure of a Man's problems, or episodic issues within the episode. Beg your pardon, where data's going to be used, taken apart, reverse engineered, and used to create many datas. For what purpose? You're talking about slave culture, and the exocomps are in the same boat. So what I love is the parallel with Data being the one who's fighting in their corner.
The exocomps had feet for their rugby/football games.
Replicated the boots. I love the chat.
I had Ship in a Bottle.
Great one. A
like
good follow-up as well. Yeah. A good follow-up, and again, very intelligently written ending.
Yes. I liked the chase.
Professor
I liked kind of like the archaeological mystery of it, the putting together the thing from the DNA and all that. I was a little disappointed in the ending. It's like, okay, all these people look humanoid because there was some progenitor race of humanoids that went and seeded every planet they found. And that's why you've got humanoid Klingons and humanoid Romulans and humanoid humans. But they're kind of a bit of like a homunculus. They're like the person inside the person, but it doesn't explain much about them. Or
there wasn't any explanation of the culture. It's just what they did. And they all ironically look like Odo. Yes. The main alien was played by Salome Jens, and she pretty much just had the same makeup when she was a founder. I found that really funny, but no, they were literally just like a basic concept for a humanoid. They were designed as a basic concept and kind of featureless in a sense, you know. They had no. She had no hair. She had no eyebrows. It was literally just a base humanoid design, and all these different species of humanoid evolved on all these different planets with all these different features and everything like that. An interesting way to explain why 90% of Star Trek aliens all look humanoid.
Yeah,
but ultimately that's its limit, you know.
Yeah, that explanation was unnecessary. I think I never worried about it.
No.
I think more people took issue. Well, why do all the aliens speak English? Because they didn't understand how the universal translator works. But yeah, and it was it is a lame attempt, which is why I say I don't like the ending that much. I liked the mystery put forward, that there's some sort of message or something encoded in this DNA that magically reconfigures a tricorder to project a hologram. That was so weak.
I want a tricorder.
Yeah.
I want one. I do. You know, you can put anything in the tricorder or just go, yeah. Okay. It's like, they've made this puzzle that when put together will just activate any transporter, any tricorder, any piece of technology. You know, I'm surprised actually it didn't access the tricorder to access the comm device, to access the transporter, to build the body. You know, or just to replicate it. You know,
that would have been better. and just like, oh, it's somehow making the tricorder change itself. It'd be like, oh, my radio picked up a radio signal and now it's reconfiguring itself into a toaster and making bread, like making toast. Like, that's not how
It's
technology
like just
works.
virus, isn't it?
Yeah.
Virus in a tricorder. Yeah. It was a good chase. I thought it was the journey was good. The destination was probably not as good.
Yeah. Rightful Heir. I've got. That's the one where they create the clone of Kayless.
Ah, yeah, and Worf thinks he's hallucinating, but it's actually not because he's there.
Yeah, so it's a profound religious experience for Worf until it isn't.
Poor Worf.
Yeah.
Yeah,
but
good one.
I liked the implication. It's like, oh, Klingon Messiah just shows up and you're the guy there, and
It's I think the equivalent in the Western world is someone just creating Jesus in a test tube.
yeah.
You know, and say, but look, the Messiah has returned. You know, and you imagine if you imagine the consequences to the culture of doing something on that scale. The Klingons have got balls, man.
Yeah.
It's a great way to try and homogenize the Empire, because everybody loved Kahless.
Yes.
Wow.
Next on my list is one that I can watch 100 times over again and just be like, put on a random episode, that is Timescape. This is the frozen Romulan warbird and the frozen Enterprise.
Yeah.
Scene where Picard draws the smiley face and the warp core breach cloud is hilarious.
Yeah, that was good. That was a good one. Again, dealing with time travel, in a sense. But what I liked is the fact that it was a singularity, a quantum singularity that the Romulans were using, and the aliens that live within that singularity because it's their natural habitat. But because the Romulan one was artificial, wasn't it? They couldn't sustain themselves in it because it wasn't. It was just artificial. So it broke time. And I loved the little thing where Picard just reaches for the bowl of fruit and his fingernails just growing. You think, oh, that must be immensely painful to have your fingernails grow at a rate of 1 centimeter in a second.
Yeah.
I always expected to see a little bit of blood there, but it's the context of his hand was within the field, so his hand experienced however many days it was, where the rest of his body didn't. So Picard is essentially one hand is older than the other.
Yeah. One fun fact about that episode that people were quick to point out: if you watch the scene where he enters the room before he touches the bowl of fruit, they had already done the prosthetics on the hand with the nails and everything. So if you look, you see that he's already got the long fingernails in the first shot, and then
I'm gonna have to watch out for that now.
Yeah,
I'm definitely gonna have to watch out for that one.
But that was good. Not only did it have like the sci-fi of the time split, they were confronted with the mystery of what was going on, why there were Romulans in the Enterprise, why it looked like one was shooting Crusher.
Yeah. It looked like a hostile takeover of the ship. But yeah, great mystery. Kind of fun. And I liked the fact that there was a runabout in The Next Generation. It is one of my favourite ships. Your image is blocking on this backdrop. It is blocking a runabout. I'm not going to move you, don't worry. But it is my favourite little vessel. It's my favourite best looking shuttle in by a long mile, because it's such a great, very diverse little machine there that you can use for any sort of excursions. I suppose short range excursions. I also like the fact that the back is just a dining area.
Yeah,
it's great. You only need to have some food and then pilot the ship. You don't need a bed.
it's It's like a cottage, a small cottage or cabin.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. It's a tiny living space. It's great. It's absolutely great.
And to end season 6, Descent. I liked part 1. I don't know if I liked part 2 as much. I liked the mystery setting up with these weird Borg in a weird Borg ship and the transwarp conduit to the Delta Quadrant.
Yeah,
because that's where they end up.
yeah,
And I like when they go to the Delta Quadrant before Voyager, because it just seems more, it seems neater or cool continuity, because you watch it, and when I watched it the first time, there was no Voyager yet, and I didn't pay much attention to the fact that they were in the Delta Quadrant or anything. And then later on, when Voyager aired and I'd rewatch these episodes in reruns, it'd be like, oh crap, they're in the Delta Quadrant.
yeah.
So
Yeah, but they're in the part of the Delta Quadrant, Clayton, that Voyager is not in Voyager's path.
yeah,
it's just off there near the edge of the
to the
galaxy.
left. Yeah.
It's to the left. Yeah, they're not gonna go through it and visit on their way through.
Oh, and yes, anything with Gowron is great. It's like those eyes that glory to your house.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. It's his eyes. I said to when I met Scott McDonald, I says, you and Robert O'Reilly can act with your eyes, and I love it. Because it is. And it's just, you wouldn't want Gowron staring at you, holding your back left, because you'd be like, you just go, I'm just gonna go. Yeah, I
Imagine having
love
dinner with that guy sitting across the table from him.
Jesus, undiscovered country much. Love it. No, brilliant. Yeah, Gowron episode.
Season 7.
Season 7.
We're almost out of TNG.
We are.
What do you got there?
The Pegasus. The Pegasus. And the reason I choose the Pegasus is because not only was it just for a sci-fi nerd, it was just so cool to imagine the Enterprise flying through an asteroid. But it also dealt with a flaw in a character, and again reiterating that these characters that we love and that we speak about so often were not perfect. They were flawed, and they didn't get where they were through being a Mary Sue who was good at everything. They made mistakes. They had errors in judgment. And the Pegasus, to me, was just, it was a great episode, and I loved seeing Riker with flaws, not just weakness for women and stuff like that, and cocking his leg over a chair. It was that he made mistakes. He was a young man who was eager to follow his duty and his young moral compass, and he made a mistake. And then he, as an adult, he's having, as a grown, seasoned, mature man, he's having to reprocess that mistake with a different context and make a decision again about, do I do the grown up thing here? And in some ways he's facing the same battle with himself as he did previously, because he was just an ensign and he's facing having to disobey his captain where he decides to join him. Now he's a commander having to disobey an admiral, and not only that admiral but other admirals as well. So that the proportion of the problem is still the same, it's just higher up. And I enjoyed that episode immensely, because it showed, again, some flaws within the Federation. It wasn't a perfect organization. It was it was flawed and it didn't always work. I enjoyed that.
And somebody in the chat earlier had brought up the drumhead, which I don't think we talked about.
No, we didn't.
That was a great episode that illustrates that again.
Yes.
Where that admiral just goes off on a witch hunt, essentially. Yeah. And the answer is, like, there's always going to be people like that. You have to maintain vigilance.
Yes. Yeah, and the Federation has to do that so many times. And in some ways, it points to the need for the involvement of, or the creation of things like Section 31 to maintain paradise. But we did miss, we did skip through one two-parter that I really did enjoy. And that was Chain of Command.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Chain of Command was... It was a difficult one to watch. Certainly the second part. The first part was a little bit of a... It was a setup, and it was meeting this other abrasive captain who you didn't like. As a kid, I'm watching it as you know, this 14, 15-year-old, however old I was at the time. I'm watching this with a new captain, and I'm thinking, that captain's a dick. I agree with Riker. You know, we didn't like Jellicoe because we're thinking, yeah, you're not Picard. Get off. You're taking over the Enterprise. Get out of here. And then the second episode, I think, is very difficult to watch, and you've got David Warner giving this absolutely cracking performance as this Cardassian, and you've got Picard being psychologically and physically tortured. Very unsettling to see. But now I view Chain of Command with a very, very different context, or from a different point of view, as a grown-up. And I actually think Jellicoe's all right. He's a good captain, because all he's doing is he's going, right, we've got an emergency situation. Yes, this is a flagship. Yes, it's a cruise liner, essentially. And it's the flagship of of Starfleet. But it's not ready for battle. And I want it battle ready. We're going into a potentially hostile situation. I want everybody working around the clock to make sure this ship is ready as it needs to be. And you've got Riker just being a complete child and going, no, not going to do it. And I actually find myself siding on the side of Jellicoe. Having, watching, going back and watching that.
I felt the same way as a kid watching him. He's like, oh, Captain Buzz Killington here. And it's just, he's just terrible. And now it's like, okay, yeah, he was kind of being the grown-up in the room.
Yeah, yeah. And he finally got Troy to wear a uniform.
Yeah.
Which we all kind of liked, because once she was out of those pantsuits, it was really nice to see her in a uniform.
Ronnie Cox was great. He was great in Stargate.
Yeah. Come on, Ronnie Cox is great in anything. He could play just the bad guy in everything, and I think I'd be okay with it. Because there's something menacing about him, especially in RoboCop, where he goes into the bathroom and Bob's in there. Is it Bob? He's talking shit about him, and oh my god, that scene was just Dick Jones. Yeah, it was just brilliant, absolutely brilliant in that. So menacing, and to have him appear in Star Trek was brilliant. But at the time, I really resented it. But yeah, it was a great two-parter, I thought. And it kind of out of taste with Star Trek. Because if you think about it, you've got Picard and he's the diplomat. He's not the warrior. He's the talker. He's the negotiator. He's the intellectual rather than the brawler. And you're pulling an intellectual into the world, the physical world. And, Picard's not ready for the physical nature of the mission that he's on. He's absolutely knackered, and it shows. but also you're taking an intellectual and you're torturing him mentally. That, to me, it felt out of place, but so good as a story, and so different that I ended up really enjoying Chain of Command.
Was he back in the captain's chair after that one too?
Yeah. After a bit of counselling, he's fine. He's no good when he sees 4 lights though.
Yeah.
He's like, you bugger, there's 5 lights. No, get out of it. He's useless whenever anyone shows him more than 4 lights. But we were in season 7, weren't we? Yeah.
I got phantasms.
Phantasms.
That's Data's nightmare.
Yes.
The Troy cake. Worf was great in that.
They certainly got a few memes from that episode, didn't they?
With mint frosting.
Yeah. With mint frosting. So, yes, I am calling you on my mobile. I have unlimited data.
Yeah.
Phone in it. Yeah, good one.
I liked Inheritance as well. That's the Data's mom, the other Soong android.
Juliana
She doesn't
Taylor.
know she's an android.
Yeah. It was a good one, that was. Thinking it was to me, they sort of left the door slightly ajar there, because what I thought was great about Data and Lore is that they were somewhat unique, and it wasn't mentioned that Soong had built any more androids, and it felt a little bit retconish. And then you have all these other androids that Soong apparently created, and that door got progressively pushed further open as Star Trek went on. And I thought, especially with Nemesis and B4, it's like, there would have been prototypes, but I thought Lore was the prototype. It gave a little bit too much to Star Trek to start retconning in itself in some respects, but the episode itself I thought was really good and very well acted by all. Very good.
One of my favorites from season 7, Parallels.
Yeah.
And I know people complained. I know people complained about the Worf Troy romance later, but this was the episode that kicked it off, because this let him see versions of history where he is in a relationship with Troy and makes him rethink her rather than the 7 Chakotay thing that came out of the blue in Voyager.
There was at least a reason for it.
But Parallels is fun just to see all the different versions of things. The painting change, the cake change, the fact that they're at war with the Bajorans. Just crazy nonsense like that, or the universe where the Borg have taken over and there's only few ships left, and
very, very interesting sort of peer into any number of untold Star Trek stories that aren't canon simply because they didn't happen in this universe. I like that one because again it was very sort of Trekkie and sci-fi. And you got to see a lot of interesting. You got to see a few different bridge designs as well. Let's redress the bridge and put some fogged glass on the bridge because that's safe.
Parallels is a Worf must suffer episode. Says in the chat.
No, you're right. Yeah, Worf must suffer. Everyone's got to have a suffer episode somewhere. Riker's got to suffer with a mental breakdown. Picard's got to get tortured. Geordie's got to get his mind wiped. Everyone's got to have. But I think they picked on O'Brien a bit too much in Deep Space Nine.
Oh yeah. The hardest working engineer in Starfleet.
I know what they thought at the end of O'Brien's run in Next Gen. They thought, you know what, We've picked on all the main crew. We haven't got O'Brien. Wouldn't it be cool if we did it for 7 seasons of television? Oh, yes, yeah. Parallels was good. It's actually the episode before the Pegasus. So yeah. And I kind of liked Thine Own Self in some respects.
That's next on my list.
Was it?
Yeah.
Oh right, okay, yeah, that's good. Yeah, I liked that episode because it was a good mystery, but not for the audience. We know who Data is. We know what's going. We know him. We know what he is. These people don't, and it's about them having to uncover the mystery of what Data is and where he's, what he could bring to the situation. But what I love is Data is so badly damaged he doesn't know that he's carrying these pieces of metal that are going to make people sick.
Yeah. And the way he deduces everything, their level of science is like pre-Renaissance, like, oh, you have a fever, the fire in you is out of balance. And
we must learn, we must encourage the fire to come out of the wood. It's in there somewhere, we know it is.
Yep.
Love it.
The thing I always like about that is that it did lead to some correct medical treatments. What quenches fire? Water. So applying a cold compress to the head helps with the fever. Like right result, wrong reason.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I like, as long as you suspend the disbelief that he got just the right amount of amnesia, that he could, he couldn't remember any technical knowledge, but he could remember language and how to move and how to deduce things. And
very selective.
So eventually he figures out that radioactive must be a warning about the metal and stuff.
Yeah.
He has no idea what the word means.
No.
But it's on this box.
No, and it's in giant red writing, but no. He'd also have forgotten that red usually means bad.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, good one. A lot of people give this next episode shit, but I really liked it, and that was Genesis.
Yep, that's the next I got.
Yeah, I can't help it, guys. All right, I really like that episode. I loved seeing a prehistoric Klingon. That was just brilliant, and somehow the Klingon is more pissed off than he. That's Worf.
It's almost crustacean-like.
Yeah, I think
like claws and pinchers.
They tried to get as very as close to the Predator as possible, didn't they? But yeah,
I'm sad we didn't get to see Picard turn into the
pygmy marmoset.
Yeah.
I would love to have seen that. That would have been hilarious.
Yeah, the science behind that's bad, but it's a fun story.
It is,
like,
yeah.
We don't have spider DNA in us.
No. And it would have made more sense had Barclay had Barclay kept that spider from Chief O'Brien from Realm of Fear, and he somehow just fused with the spider. It degraded them both. The spider jumped on him and bit him, or anything to explain why Barclay would turn into a spider. But it's what I think. I think Genesis is probably a guilty pleasure when it comes to the next gen. It's an episode I enjoy watching if I don't think too much.
Yeah.
Someone's actually put in the chat, Genesis is a guilty pleasure episode. Yeah, there you go.
After Genesis, my next is Emergence, which a lot of people don't like, but I liked it as a kid. I liked the idea that the AI in the ship decided it was going to procreate and it wasn't going to tell anybody what it was doing, and it was just going to do it as if it was some sort of natural instinct that kicked in that it couldn't explain, and it played it all out in the holodeck, going to new vertiform city.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was talked about on last week's stream. It wasn't one of my favourites. I didn't enjoy it. because I knew that we were getting very close to the end of the next gen, and it was airing here in England on BBC Two, and it's the only place you could really watch it unless you had our version of cable. And I knew that it was getting close to the end. I'd read it in magazines that season 7 was the final season. I didn't know anything about Generations at that point. And I thought, there's only 2 episodes left. One's a 2-parter. And this is all we've got left. And I didn't enjoy that episode because I was beginning to feel the door closing for the season. So I wanted something a little bit more. Emergence, maybe I've just not given it enough of a chance. I have only seen it twice, I believe, since it aired. So, but yeah, it was, to me, it was almost like you're trying to savor that last bite, which you find, I don't know, you're saving the last bite of a cheesecake and you find a lump of cheese. You know, it was a little bit tough to get past. But no, the concept was great, but it was for me, it wasn't a really good one. But hey, we couldn't agree on every episode.
That's right. And then the last I have is, of course, All Good Things, which
you have it
is, on the list? In terms of television show finales, I don't know if I have ever seen anything approach the level of masterpiece that this was. Like, I'm trying to think of any other show where they had a planned ending for it and where it ended this well. I'm not sure I can think of any. I know I've been disappointed by plenty of finales or underwhelmed. Even Deep Space Nine is probably the closest. What You Leave Behind is probably the closest to something as good as All Good Things. But yeah.
Oh, good.
I only ever saw MASH. They brought up MASH in the thing. I saw reruns when I was a kid, but I never saw the finale.
The finale is incredibly difficult to get right because you have to close off an entire series of television or a movie. There's very few shows out there that have had a brilliant finale. Next Gen is definitely one of my top ones. The other is Blackadder Goes Forth. The final episode of that was just beyond anything you could have imagined. It was incredible ending, and for a comedy show as well. It was tremendous ending to it. But in terms of other Star Trek, I don't think anything has even come close to All Good Things. You know, Enterprise we don't talk about because but Deep Space Nine I thought was okay. I think it could have been so much better if they didn't have the cheesy montage. The cheesy montage threw the pacing of it all off completely. We didn't need to see greatest hits moments with all the characters. But Voyager's final episode was just meh. So All Good Things was just it was a wonderful bookend. And I think that's where Deep Space Nine did well as well, because it was a great bookend to the series itself. It finished where it started, sorry. The 7-year, it's been on trial for 7 years. And then the conclusion of that trial, or the non-conclusion of that trial. But it was wonderfully rounded.
Yeah.
Wonderfully
agreed.
Yeah. But then All Good Things, like they say, must come to an end, and Next Gen did for all of 6 months, and then Generations came out. Which was
on that note, we've hit the end of TNG, but we're now approaching the 2.5 hour mark.
We are. Yeah.
So we may want to split this up.
Yeah, I think you're right.
And come back to tackle DS9, Voyager, Enterprise.
But that's
I
four
had-
streams. We're gonna have to find time for 4 streams.
That's if we keep them shorter, I can probably fit them in. Sunday mornings aren't too bad.
Yeah.
But, I had some questions. I figured we'd get through everything and then I'd ask these questions.
Of course.
Some questions. So, who is your favorite captain across those 5 series, I guess?
That my answer has changed in the last couple of years, but I don't think that's particularly fair to the character. That's more of what they've done to the character since. Used to be Picard was my favorite, ultimate favorite, because he was if the original series was the Wild West of Star Trek and Captain Kirk was the local sheriff and he was the cool local sheriff, Picard was the diplomat. Picard was the grown-up in that sense. Yes. He was the one you could always talk to, and he wouldn't help you resolve a situation through his own hubris or his own ego. He genuinely want to help you, and he genuinely want to help any situation. In essence, there was very little ego there, and what annoyed me so much with the deconstruction of Picard in the Abominations was that they felt that Picard's ego needed to be beaten down, whereas he'd earned the right to be who he was, to have his stature. Now, as I said, my opinion has changed somewhat since they released all the Abominations, and I actually rate Sisko as probably the best captain, because I think he's an interesting mix of Kirk and Picard, whereas he is fully capable of being a diplomat. He's proven it time and time again, but he's a captain that takes no shit. The way he handles things, he's not afraid to get his hands dirty, and he is fully capable. He's like the dad, whereas Picard isn't really like a dad. Sisko is like a dad who says, "Sit down, shut up, and let's have a conversation." You know, and so it's always been a bit of a toss up between those two. But Sisko has to be, I think, for different reasons than Picard. So, like I say, it's not really very fair. But yeah, Sisko and Picard at times they level peg it. I'm not gonna lie. How about yourself?
I would have to agree. I do like all the captains for different reasons.
Yes.
I think they didn't do enough with Archer to, or I guess they kind of did. I always felt that Archer was like, we're ready, let's go out, let's do this, we can do this, let's prove ourselves. And they didn't do enough to kind of make him have to draw back and become more cautious. Like, oh, maybe knocking on the door of every alien isn't a good idea. And maybe, violating the first contact type things or the prime directive, which doesn't exist yet. And they do that a little bit, but I felt that they didn't keep that a strong enough thread through his character. He would revert in various episodes to still being headstrong and stuff. And you'd think there were a few key episodes where it's like, okay, it's okay to ask for help. It's okay to like Breaking the Ice is one where he had to ask for help from the Vulcans.
That was swallowing his pride.
Yeah. And it sometimes felt like the lessons he learned weren't carried on through stories well enough.
Do you also think that the lessons he was supposed to learn was in some ways imprinted onto Trip instead? Because Trip is learning all of those lessons about non-interference, and he's learning the hard way. But the captain doesn't learn, but Trip does. It's almost as
Yeah,
if you put them together, they'd make a better captain. They're like opposite
yeah,
sides
and
in a sense.
it's like they did change the story focus to Trip a bit more, and the character development to Trip, and oddly enough, the original kind of suggested romance between uh, T'Pol and Archer
Mm,
became Trip and T'Pol
yeah,
in later seasons for reasons. Um, but yeah, definitely with respect to favorites, like Cisco,
mm,
he did. Um, Avery Brooks did a great job with him for most episodes. There are a
yeah.
couple episodes where I thought it was dumb, but they were in my least favorite episodes from last week that we talked about.
Yeah.
Who's your favorite Doctor?
Oh, that's a tough one. That's a tough one. Now I can tell you who my least favourite doctors are. Crusher is probably my least favourite, but Bashir was one of my least favourites, but he sort of grew on me a little bit. Um, I would have to say, and this has cost me a few subscribers actually saying this. Or I said it, and a few people disappeared. Phlox is probably my favourite doctor in the definition of what you'd call a doctor. My favourite character who happens to be a doctor, or my favourite doctor character, has got to be the holographic doctor. But Phlox, in terms of a doctor, he is just like the perfect doctor. He's got a cracking bedside manner. He's like a dad. He just gets angry when people violate medical ethics. And he has that sort of air about his personality where he's just like, when he gets angry with the Vulcan who comes to psychoanalyze Archer, and he says, "You come to my sick bay under false pretenses. Where are your medical ethics?" And you're like, "My dad's telling me off." You get that sort of feeling, and you feel his parental side. He's kind of like a father to the crew in that sense. He's sweet and endearing. He's got a vicious streak, but I love the Denobulans as a people as well. He adds to his character the fact that they have 3 wives and each wife has 3 husbands, and it's very complicated. But he's in some ways he's more evolved than the crew, and I like that because he's obviously been in the interspecies medical exchange for so long, and what can I say? The actor just pulls him off perfectly. So yeah, the holographic Doctor is the Cordelia of Star Trek. He's always gonna. He was always going to be. He's abrasive. He's brass. But there's more to him. But yeah, I would say the Phlox is my favourite, followed closely by the holographic Doctor. How about you?
What made Phlox great, in my opinion, is the fact that he's one of 2 aliens on a ship full of humans, and he's the one alien who wants to be there.
Yeah.
So he acts as like this incredible counterbalance to T'Pol, where he's sitting there and being like, infinite diversity and infinite combinations. Isn't that what you guys say? Try new things. And
yeah,
isn't it great being around all these humans and everything? And she's just like, they smell terrible.
Yeah, they stink. They come on.
Yeah.
You must smell it. Oh, I don't know.
But definitely for me.
Sorry, a $20 super chat from Matthew Ross.
Wow.
Thank you very much for that, young man. That's very good of you. For the streams, thank you both. Oh, well, to be fair, mate, there's going to be more because we only got through 1 series. Which I should have really expected, but I shall change the thumbnails to say part 1 of 4 or something. But thank you so much for that, Matthew. That's very, 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 very generous of you. That's absolutely wonderful. Yeah. Sorry, you were saying about Phlox.
With Phlox, it's I think he was a great character, but yes, the Voyager Doctor is my favorite Doctor. I never felt that I got to know Pulaski well enough to decide whether I liked her or not. When I was a kid, I was used to Beverly Crusher, and when they changed her without warning, and Pulaski seemed like a bit of a stuffed shirt, and she didn't call Data by his proper name and stuff, and it was just like, I don't think I like you very much. And who are the other doctors? Bashir had great character development.
Yes.
And he was a guy where, again, he went out there being like, yeah, I can do this. I can't wait to be here. This is great and everything. It's like, smack him down and you need to learn some lessons. And, you know, so he had great character development. And yeah, but it's still the Doctor from Voyager.
He is a very it's ironic that I'd say this, but he's very unique to the world of Star Trek. To have someone who's just blunt, because he was programmed that way, you know.
Yeah,
he's capable of change, but he is just some of the early episodes of Voyager when he's talking, my wife absolutely loves his character. She really does. She absolutely adores the holographic Doctor, because he's blunt like she is. So yeah, it absolutely works well. Love it.
Okay, I'm going to switch it up, and I'll try something different. I'm going to give you random pairings of characters across the different series. You tell me which one you like better.
Okay, let's go for it. I'm up for it. Why not?
All right. Bashir or Trip?
That's random.
Yeah, very random.
Bashir versus Trip. Trip.
Trip, eh?
Trip. The reason for that is just the accent.
It's the accent. I guess Bashir's accent must sound kind of commonplace to you. It's exotic to me. Both their accents are exotic to me.
I suppose, yeah.
Keep your shirt on, Lieutenant.
Rather than, are you serious? I love the fact that Bashir's father was played by an Englishman who actually plays a lot of Indian characters as well. You know,
Brian George, is that his name?
Oh,
the actor.
I can't remember his name now. Oh, chat might be able to help.
I just saw him in something.
Yeah, I've just watched. I've not long watched the episode a few days back with my lad.
It's Brian George. I think it was Brian George. I'm thinking. British actor, plays Indian characters. Unless that wasn't him.
It was.
Maybe I'm confusing him with a different actor.
Yeah.
He played Bashir's father in Deep Space Nine. That's what Wikipedia says. So.
Yeah. It's just it cracked me
up. Next pairing. Paris or Barclay?
Barclay.
Yeah,
Barclay's going to win pretty much any one of those kind of matchups, because he's an interesting character. To me, Paris, there wasn't an awful lot to him. He was a talented pilot, sure. That's fine. He was the son of an admiral who got a little bratty. He kind of rebelled against his father and joined the Marquis and ended up in prison for it. He got given a second chance and he made something of himself. But beyond that, and it took him 7 years to do it, beyond that, I would choose Barclay. Because I relate to Barclay more, I suppose.
Yeah. I can see that.
You should have seen my early live streams.
Phlox or Garrick?
Oh, you get Phlox or Garrick? Garrick.
He's such an interesting character.
He's a bit of an enigma. And he has such conviction within his own motivations. Garrick is... I love some of... Garrick's lines are fantastic. Are you sure that's the moral of the story, Doctor? Or, yeah, of course. What else would it be? that you should never tell the same lie twice.
Yeah.
Yeah, about the boy who cried wolf. Such a wonderful point of view for someone, and I love the relationship between him. And I'm going to get a little cross now because of what modern fans are doing to those two, claiming that they're some sort of gay couple or that they're into each other. It's not that at all. I said this on my last stream. Garrick uses Bashir as a plaything at times, and he is his mentor to a life. You know, Bashir loves him because of the mystery. He always loves the mystery, and Garrick is nothing but mystery. It's an yes. Obsession with Garrick in this form of there's secrets to be unveiled, there's mystery to be solved, and Garrick sees that in Bashir and dangles the carrot, and in some ways treats Bashir like a pet, but a loving pet. But he's never intimated that there'd ever be any kind of couple, and I hate that they do that. The wife says Garrick as well. There you go. Yeah. I think Garrick just wins. Garrick.
7 or T'Pol?
Oh, now you're being unfair. You're being unfair to younger me. Oh my god. 7 of 9 of T'Pol.
I actually had a crush on B'Elanna, so.
Who didn't? I mean, like even in makeup. Oh, wow.
You got a super chat there.
Oh, just another watch nerd. £5 super chat. Garrick for the win. Oh, I think we should pay that to Garrick. Garrick for the win. Thank you very much for that super chat. Garrick for the win. I completely agree. But I don't ever like to jump away from super chat so quick, but that was a nightmarish one you've just presented me with. That's a difficult one because 7 of 9 and T'Pol both have great character development as characters. They have almost the same journey. 7 of 9 becomes more human and T'Pol becomes less Vulcan through whatever means anyway. That's a tough one to answer. It depends in what context. If you're talking character, that one's a tough one. I think that's the toughest one you've asked me so far. That's a real challenge. Younger me, as in 1990s me, would have picked 7 of 9 over practically any other character in the universe, but for obvious reasons. Slightly more mature me would have fell hell over heels for Jolene Blalock. And T'Pol as a character, now when I revisit T'Pol as a character, she's almost far more complex than 7 of 9. 7 of 9's quite innocent in certain respects. She's very new to the world and the way the world works. So I would say again, it used to be 7 and 9, but I would go to T'Pol. Sod it. Let's stand on firm ground. I'm going to say T'Pol.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would go to Paul as well. 7, they took a while. Like both of them were essentially eye candy.
Yes.
For male viewers, and they didn't put a lot of effort, I felt, into 7 at the start. No. They really developed her character later, but initially she was just there to get rid of Kess and be more eye candy. To Paul, very much still eye candy, but they made her a much more complex character to start with, and developed her better. And it took her longer to develop, I think. Like, you know, it took her almost an entire season before she would like advocate for Archer and the Enterprise and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, Hoshi was very cute. Jimmy says in the thing.
Yes. Yeah. When you're talking about physical attractiveness, both facially and with the body, for example, that is such a subjective thing. I think it's more subjective than interesting character, because interesting character can be argued to a point that you can argue some facts. There's less of a subjective sort of point of view there. If you're talking if you're talking attractiveness, there's any number of women in Star Trek that blokes find attractive, and any number of blokes that women find attractive. But in terms of character,
a video of who's the most attractive people in Star Trek would just be a bunch of people agreeing to disagree.
Yeah. It'll be. I imagine a live debate in a hall would sound pretty much like a turkey nest. Yeah, it's just a bunch of blokes going gobble 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 gobble.
Next pairing, Quark or Neelix?
Quark.
Yeah.
Easy one.
Yeah,
easy one. Quark, because I don't really like to say this word too much on my stream, so I apologise if anyone gets offended. But yesterday I watched an episode of DS9 and I actually said out loud to an empty room, "My God, Quark is such a cunt." And the reason I said that was because I was watching Dr. Bashir, I presume, and and it was the bit where Rom's saying how much he loves Lita, and he's messed up and everything like that, and he buggers off, and then Lita comes down, and Quark doesn't say anything. He just tries to put her off. You know what I mean? He just says, "Oh, maybe he just doesn't like you." It's like, you are such a cunt. Your brother's just basically said, professed his love for her, and not been able to tell her, and you're being an absolute dick. But I love him for it, and I love Quark for it, because he's such a... He's so... he stands so firm on his own beliefs. And rarely does he change his ways. He does in one episode, but I think that just pushes the limits of what a biological individual should ever do. But he pretty much sticks his feet in the mud. And
he has some great observations about humanity and the Federation.
Yeah, and parallels between humans and Ferengis. Certainly older humans.
Neelix just seems more than happy to jump into bed with the Federation and cheerleader for them.
Neelix is the guy who tells you what you want to hear, not what you should hear. Whereas Quark will tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. I think that's the difference between them. Neelix has some great insights in a Troy kind of way. But he is probably one of the most annoying characters in Star Trek. He may essentially be the Jar Jar Binks of the Star Trek universe. You know,
there are some episodes where he's good, but
yes,
he really can be. He was used as comic relief, but in a very annoying way. I can't think of a better adjective.
It's almost, the character almost is a self-insert into the show. Just the character inserting himself into the situation. Captain, I think I'll join your crew. Captain, I think I'll take your galley and make it into I'll take your personal cafeteria and make it into a galley for the crew. Captain, I think I'll take this liberty, and I'll take that liberty, and I'll become a member of your crew for about 2 years, and then I'll become useless because I haven't gone that far. Yeah. And then I'll lie to you, I'll deceive you, and it baffled me a lot of the decisions they made with Neelix, and it's almost he loves singing the tune of Starfleet, singing the tune of the Federation, and then I think the writers were perfectly aware of that and robbed him of the chance of getting to Earth. The episode before. Yeah,
it's like, oh look, along the path that Voyager's taking back to the Alpha Quadrant, they happen to find a remote group of Talaxians.
It just happened to be in the way.
A single mom who's looking for a baby daddy, and
Yeah, that's when you put it like that, you can change the context of Star Trek. Well, my wife chose.
Well, the sad thing
Paul.
is, like, we could look at that as like, oh, this is such weak episodes, and sadly, they're still miles ahead of what we've seen from Star Trek lately.
I didn't actually realize this, Clayton, but my marriage is on the line on this stream. Quok, if you had said otherwise, I'd divorce you.
That's funny.
There you go.
Okay, how about Lita or Tasha Yar?
Oh, Lita. Sorry, I answered too quick. Allow me to just do that again. Lita.
Lita.
Not only is Chase Masterson absolutely gorgeous, does she not have the most perfect pair of eyes you've ever seen?
Yes.
No, I genuinely mean that. I wasn't going for some sort of innuendo or double entendre or anything like that. Pardon the pun. She had a superbly beautiful pair of eyes, and you could just, if you look, I mean, it's like No Visitor. There are moments where Kira is one of the most beautiful women you'll ever see. And it's all in the eyes. And I didn't watch Dr. Bashir, I presume, just for Lita, honest.
She does have a very interesting character arc. It's more like a background Dabo girl, and just eye candy, and then she actually becomes more of a main character with a much deeper. They flesh out her character so much more. She becomes part of like the resistance.
Yeah.
It's quite the interesting arc for somebody who you figured would be there for a couple episodes in the background and then never be seen again.
Yeah. Yeah, she was in it. There was more. She was certainly more interesting as a character, and yeah, better eye candy.
So for this next pairing, we'll see if the eyes have it again.
Okay.
Reed or Gowron?
Reed or Gowron? Oh, Gowron. Yeah, it's got to be Gowron. Gowron. Gowron is perfect politician. He's a brilliant politician, and he the character devolves so much into the perfect politician. Yeah, he's a warrior. He's worthy. You know, he's an honourable warrior, but he's a nasty politician.
Oh, yeah.
And unwavering with it as well. His personal ambition gets in the way every time. You know. Answer right, husband. But yeah, Gowron, definitely.
Okay, my last one.
Okay.
Weyoun, Brunt, or Shran?
Weyoun. Weyoun. Shran's great. They're all great in different ways. They all have one constant, of course. They're all played by Jeffrey Combs. But, and great question, by the way. Brunt is, well, the C word version of that. he's an unwavering Ferengi. And he's very comical with it as well. And I think he's a very interesting character. Shran, I think, is the most honourable character I've seen Jeffrey Combs play. And the most fiery and interesting. But what I love about Weyoun is just he's got the biggest set of Vorta testicles you've ever known. And he just gives absolutely no fucks. He's like he's like the nicest villain you don't want to talk to.
Yeah.
You know,
it's a great way to describe him.
He's duplicitous. He's vile. He's unwavering in some respects, with the exception of one Deep Space Nine episode. He believes so much in what he is and what he's doing, but Weyoun has to win because I had the most fun watching him.
Yeah, he is so courteously diplomatic while being essentially like this terrible villain.
Yeah,
Um,
menacingly
uh,
villainous,
yeah,
but with
yeah,
a diplomatic half smile that you just wouldn't trust. It's so bizarre, but what a great character.
yeah. Weak eyes, good ears.
Yeah, has his he dies pretty well several times over, and I like the fact that they clone them, and that's how the
Yes.
voices just keep coming back. So it's like, oh, you didn't like that one, you broke his neck. No, he's coming back, don't worry.
I love after, I think that was Wei Yun 6 who had his neck broken, and when Wei Yun 7 walks in the room, Damar's drinking and starts laughing or chuckling. It's like just the best moment.
I just love it. It says maybe you should ask Worf again. Oh, it's brilliant. He just got too cocky, too close, and you wouldn't stand that close. I used to have a boss like Wei Yun. Oh, no way. I would have loved that. Oh, my wife says Brunt. Brunt is the best. I'm going downstairs to divorce.
Yeah. So that's all I've got.
Well, those were very interesting pairings. That I like that they weren't necessarily related to one another. You know, a lot of people compare the best captain, the best first officer, the best engineer, the best plasma scrubber. You know, but very different way of looking at it.
Best plasma scrubber by hands down is the EMH Mark Ones.
They do such a wonderful job.
Yeah.
No, that's brilliant. Yeah, absolutely brilliant. Wayne is the polite villain. You're not wrong. My mother always had a bit of a crush on Trip as well. She always said. Yeah. I think there are great characters, there are bad characters, there are great actors. I think there are bad actors. If you look in for example, if you look in the earlier seasons of The Next Generation, you see bad extras, and we used to play a game called Spot the Bad Extra, and there'd always be someone in an episode who's a bad extra, someone that goes round through the wrong door, someone that's supposed to be choking on the bridge. It's like when I think it was Evolution in The Next Gen, and the nanites had changed the atmosphere, and you got one ensign sitting there at the helm, I believe, and he's going and then they clearly said to him in the background, "Okay, smoke's cleared," and he gets back to work. And you're like, "Oh my god, really?" And you certainly in the earlier Next Gens, you can spot them. They're everywhere, and it is really amusing. You can make a drinking game out of it. You probably end up with cirrhosis, of the liver, but you could play a drinking game out of it. But there's been some tremendous actors that have graced Star Trek, and I think Patrick Stewart deserves to be Picard, because he is Picard, aside from when he's not Picard. In Picard. But yeah. Well, we've gotten through The Next Generation in just shy of 3 hours. So I would suggest that we break it up evenly with DS9, and we'll do one for Voyager and we'll do one for Enterprise.
Yeah.
It was easier to do the last stream because I was the only one talking, and I was able to just go, yeah, that was a good episode. Yeah, that was a good episode. Yeah, that was a good episode. But it felt so, although it was great talking to the chat, it felt so hollow doing it on my own. So I appreciate you coming on. And I think, yeah, we'll make this a 4-part series, shall we?
That sounds good. I like that. Yeah, I'm looking at my list for Deep Space Nine, and lines 58 to 104 are, so I've got almost 44, around 50 episodes of Deep Space Nine that I say are good.
Well, I'll have to revisit mine, because I went through thinking, oh, I wonder how much time we're going to have. Let's pick the best of the best. But I'm going to have to go back through my list, and we'll have a damn good chat about Deep Space Nine as well. I think we should go for a record on a stream and end it before the 3-hour mark, just to surprise our wives.
Yes.
But it has been a great pleasure doing this. It's been so much fun. And to all the people who are watching this stream, both live and post-live, please, for me and for Clayton, please go and get Clayton's new book. I cannot plug this book enough. It is an absolutely superb book. It's called Holocene, and I bought it because Clayton told me he'd written a book, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to support Clayton in any way that I can. I sat and read this book, having read 6 or 7 books in my entire life, and I absolutely love this book. It is packed full of mystery, of intrigue, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat. I did it in 2 parts, in 2 sessions, which I've never done before. So, Clayton, you have written a fantastic book, my friend. And please, anyone watching this, go and get his book. You can get it on Amazon. Visit the website that's on the stream right now, holocenenovel.com. And please support this tremendous author. And I am really looking forward to part 2.
Thank you. Yep, I'm working on it amongst everything else.
I know that you've had a bit of a tumultuous, rocky time of it in the last couple of months. I can only hope that all smooths out for you, and that we will find the time within the next couple of weeks to continue this conversation, because it has been an absolutely wonderful experience. It always is, talking to people, especially yourself. So thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it's been a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
It is every single time, my friend, every single time. I want to say a big thank you to the people watching, everyone in the chat. Thank you, Reva, Jimmy. Thank you to my wife for commenting and threatening divorce. That was always nice. And Jackie Dose is asking if you will be continuing with the Quantum Leap reviews.
Yes, I have started episode 7. It's just trying to find the time to get to it. I don't know if this is a plus or a minus, but I'm a bit of a perfectionist when it comes to the videos I make, and that means that for every minute of talking I do, it's about an hour of post-production to get the video right. So and then it's finding those hours in the midst of everything else in life to get to it and get it done.
Absolutely.
And lately, life hasn't been very conducive to me being on a computer, so I'm just starting to get back in. I've got a bunch of irons in the fire. Hopefully, not so much that I'm putting out the flame, but they will be coming back. And I know season 2 is coming up soon. I'm behind on everything. I have seen all of season 1 of Quantum Leap, and I will be getting through those reviews. So, yes, I apologize so much for the delay, and thank everybody who's watching for their patience, who have been waiting for the next episode.
Well, I love your videos. I love your writing. I love your photography as well. That's phenomenal. You're just like a man of many talents. I'm a man of many hobbies. So it's always nice to meet someone who is at least good at more than one thing. But it's always a pleasure to have you on this channel. Thank you so much, everybody. We will be going now. And look after yourselves, and I will schedule in the stream for when we are next both available. All right. Thank you so much, guys. Take it easy. It's bye-bye.